When people heard the word reincarnation, a clear image often came to mind. They would envision a hero who would stand against evil and defeat powerful monsters with a single decisive strike. That hero usually lived a fun life, surrounded by loyal companions who admired him. That kind of life felt like it should have been a basic right for anyone reborn into another world. Yet the main character found himself in a very different situation. He had not been reborn as a hero. Instead, he had awakened as a villainous noble, a man whose fate was already sealed. He had been given the role of a character who was meant to lose and be executed. The stage for this story was Chariot Academia, the world of a popular fantasy game known for its many branching paths and endings. In every possible route, one character always stood in the way of the main heroes. That character was Ix-Bandil, a useless and cruel noble. As the eldest son of an earl who commanded the knights of the capital city, Ix abused his status and committed many crimes. His actions always led him to the same end. In every version of the story, his death was certain. After the main characters enrolled in the academy, they were destined to defeat him and end his life in a brutal battle. And it was into this very role that the protagonist had been reborn just 1 week ago. As he lay in bed, the young and fat Ix slowly came to understand the truth of his situation. School would soon begin, and the main story of the game would start in only 3 years. His future was already written, and it would lead straight to his death. Ix then turned to the young maid at his bedside and asked in a shaking voice if she would believe him if he said he was about to be murdered. The maid Celestia, who was only 12 years old, reacted with a blank look and kept splashing water as she poured it into a teapot. She raised her thumb and declared that the beautiful her finally made a ruling. She silently gestured how he would get killed. Ix figured as much. Calatia sat down on the sofa as if she owned it, and asked if he really just realized that. She pointed out how he had openly insulted lower-ranked nobles in public. She also reminded him how he had tried and failed to court a marquise's daughter. Worst of all, she pointed out how he had splashed water on a saint. She tried recalling some other things but failed due to her not-so-sharp memory. After naming all of this, she added that for some reason she felt he had changed a lot lately, but also not at the same time. Due to those atrocities, she wouldn't be surprised if Ix suddenly got his knife stabbed on himself. She apologized if she might be wrong, but if he didn't want to get killed, she then suggested an easy answer. He could simply apologize to everyone. But Ix cried out that it was already too late for apologies. In his mind, the saintesses of Calatia stood like towering figures of power. He knew he had earned the hatred of many dangerous people. With dark certainty, he believed his fate was already decided. Calatia tried to calm him down. She believed the saints would forgive him if he only said sorry. But he snapped back, certain that they held deep grudges. He explained their great power, saying they had massive amounts of mana that made them strong in healing, attack, and defense. They also led the largest church on the entire continent. His life would be over. He called the god of this world Melisto, someone cruel. Ix fell onto his bed and thought about how he had been given a chance to come to this world, a world that was once only a video game to him. He slammed his fist into the mattress in anger. Then a sudden thought struck him. He had played this game more times than he could count. He knew how to grow stronger. He knew who the dangerous people were. He even knew their weaknesses. With this knowledge, he could become so strong that no one could ever kill him. His training had to begin before school even started. Ix jumped to his feet with a sharp grin on his face and made a bold promise to himself. He would become the ultimate villain. As she watched him, Celestia claimed she couldn't understand what he was saying. Ix suddenly noticed flames around him. He then checked the palm of his hand and discovered that he had such a small talent with magic. However, he couldn't control the flames he first conjured with his excitement. He ended up rolling on the floor, burning. Calatia did not help him. She simply touched her growling tummy and cheerfully suggested that they would be having a whole roast pig for dinner that night. Later, in the Blackfeather Forest near the Bandine territory, Ix wore a heavy suit of armor as he faced a monstrous beast. He knew that killing monsters was the way to gain the experience he needed. He explained his plan aloud to Celestia, who stood beside him with a calm expression. To grow stronger, defeating powerful monsters was the most effective method. Putting his idea into action, he prepared to fight a smaller beast that had looked much bigger earlier. He held his sword and shield tightly. Celestia watched from a safe distance and asked if this smaller creature was dangerous. The beast snarled at him, and Ix felt surprised. Still, he gritted his teeth and shouted that he was not afraid, reminding himself of his goal to become the ultimate villain. His bold words ended quickly as the monster knocked him flat onto his back. The small beast stood over him. Celestia laughed and called him weak. Lying there, Ix remembered the basic rule of the game. There were no shortcuts to leveling up. The only way to raise stats was through direct combat. He realized that if he kept fighting, he would eventually grow stronger. This thought gave him a surge of determination. He stood up and, surprising Celestia, struck the beast with a single strong blow. He proved that he could become stronger. The monster fell defeated to the ground. Ix celebrated his small victory, while Celestia could only sigh. A year passed and his actions did not go unnoticed. People in the town talked about how Ix kept causing problems. They counted this as the 7th trouble he had caused that month alone. The townspeople whispered and wondered if he had changed at all. even though he was the captain's son. One person said they had heard he tried to harm himself by setting himself on fire. Others mentioned his refusal to follow Mephisto's teachings and wished that some monster would deal with him. Another person wondered if he had finally realized he was the captain's son. Their conversation carried a tired tone. One person said they did not care what he did as long as he did not create more problems for them. Another agreed and thought it would be best if he skipped the evening's party, secretly hoping that he might behave at least once. While the townspeople gossiped, Salacia worked hard, carrying 2 heavy bundles of logs. In the eyes of everyone who watched, she was an incredible personal maid. She hauled the logs to a quiet area, announcing with effort that these were the last ones for the day. At that moment, a figure wrapped completely in bandages stumbled out of a nearby kiln, crying from the pain. His body still smoked slightly from the heat. He raised a hand in thanks to Salacia for helping him. Salacia looked at him with concern and explained that his daily ritual of entering the kiln was the reason for the strange rumors spreading through the town. This painful and unusual training, however, was having a strong effect. Ix emerged from the kiln transformed. He wiped sweat from his brow and accepted a towel from Salacia. With a confident smile, he showed that the process was making him stronger. Salacia complained about the heat and used the towel for herself. Ix could not believe it was not for him. She gave him another towel and mentioned that the unusual training was clearly effective. Surprised, Ix asked if she could notice the difference. Salacia pointed at him and gave his method a name, the sauna diet. She noted that it was working well. Ix touched his cheek with satisfaction, realizing it really was making wonders around his face. However, what he wanted to point out was his improved powers and told her to watch. Salacia asked if he was talking about his full power, which was weaker than a candle fire. A tiny flame appeared on his fingertip, flickering slightly. He was proud that he could hold it a little longer than before. Salacia laughed at the small flame and found it amusing. Ix got mad and told her to pay attention. He began to explain that there were 7 basic forms of magic. The 7 forms were blue, red, green, yellow, purple, black, and white. Each form had 4 ranks, which were beginner, intermediate, advanced, and ultimate. He stressed that a person's natural talent decided how strong they could become. He explained that this kind of power was rare. He said that for an adult to master advanced magic was already a great achievement. As for ultimate magic, only a very small number of people on the entire continent had ever reached that level. Ix's color was red, hence he was a fire type. On the other hand, he recalled that saints had a rare healing type. He forgot what color and affinity it was. Salacia looked confused by the long lesson, but Salacia suddenly remembered something important. She quickly told him that he had to get ready right away for a party that night because a saint would be there. Ix burst into protest and demanded to know why she waited until the day of the event to tell him. Salacia expected him to run away and escape if he knew. He thought it was idiotic of him not to ask her since he knew she simply had forgotten to tell him. She then explained that this was not the same saint he once splashed with water. It was only a guest at a normal high society party. The explanation did not help much. He already looked completely worn out just thinking about it. His thoughts raced into panic. He imagined a terrifying enemy. He believed he was supposed to be safe until he started school. He worried that he had somehow diverged from the game's story. Salacia apologized for forgetting. Ix pushed away his fear and gave Salacia a firm thumbs up. He counted on her to do her thing. He declared that he was leaving for the land of carnage. As he ran off, Salacia noticed with worry that the towel he was wearing was not fire-resistant. In the next moment, his own power set him on fire. Salacia moved at once and dumped a heavy bucket of water on him as he shouted for someone to save him. He fell to the ground, soaked and coughing. The empty bucket landed on his head. Salacia looked down at him and calmly mentioned how she would go shopping. Ix asked if she could handle things on her own. She then turned away and a sharp, knowing look crossed her face. She thought that this was better than babysitting, especially since someone had been reducing the number of monsters near the town. She walked off and left him in his confusion. Ix sat with the wooden bucket stuck on his head. He finally understood that Salacia did not need his help. However, he was the one in need as the bucket wouldn't come off. As she walked through the woods, she thought about the recent changes in her master. He had suddenly stopped hitting her. Instead, he had begun to work hard. He trained with the knights using swords, studied magic with the mages, and even kept up with her during her daily jog. He no longer grew angry when she left his side while they were outside. She felt happy seeing how he was changing for the better. She remembered the cruel master from before and compared him to the young man who now tried his best to improve. With a firm look on her face, she reminded herself not to change her task of dealing with trash. All she could do and all she knew was how to swing her sword. This strong will had been shaped long ago, starting from the day she herself had been abandoned, which was also the same day he met her master. Her memories were cut short by a rough voice. A dangerous-looking group stood in her way and blocked the path ahead. A man stepped forward and spoke to the girl. He ordered her to lead them to the party venue. Kalacia's eyes glint with excitement. At that moment, a carriage carried by a dragon arrived at the Earl's estate. From a window, Ix watched in fear as the saint from the Mephisto churches stepped out of the carriage. An attendant gave an order for everyone to bow in honor of Saint Almelia. Ix dropped to the floor in panic. He feared that he had not trained enough for what was about to happen. The maids watched as he rolled across the hallway in distress. He then realized what he could do. It was not what he first planned, but he had no choice. His great plan was to hide inside a defensive space made from his own bedding. He felt worried because this event was not mentioned in the game's story. He looked at the code in front of him and wondered if this was what Celestia had meant by getting ready. His thoughts rushed as he felt the pressure of high society, the arrival of a saint, and Celestia's shopping. He held the code and felt like it had appeared in the game before. For some reason, a bad feeling filled his chest. Back in the forest, the thugs were being pushed back. One of them shouted in anger, unable to understand how a single child had fought 8 grown men. Their enemy was Celestia, who stood at the center of their attack like a storm made of blades. In the game, the only reason an incompetent man like Ix caused trouble for the main heroes was because of his personal maid, Celestia. To Ix, she was known as the ultimate sword, a prodigy born with rare talent for combat. In that story, she served as his final guard, a last enemy strong enough to block the heroes themselves. But that story belonged to another timeline. In the present, Celestia lost focus when she heard the faint sound of water. A pillar of water burst from behind her and threw her into the air. She fell hard onto the wet ground. The leader of the thugs appeared with a mocking tone. He pointed out that while she had talent, she lacked real experience. He criticized her for not expecting an ambush, which made his job easy. His plan had only been to knock her down, and he succeeded by using water magic from a shark-like beast on his shoulder. He then stopped after realizing he had spoken too much. He noticed her age and seemed shocked that she looked as young as his own child. Even so, he used his water magic again to render her unable to move. The thug leader stood over the defeated Celestia and thought about forcing her to give up information about the security. He used his water magic to cover her face and torture her. He ordered a subordinate to clean the blood and remove all signs of the fight. The subordinate accepted the order and moved right away. As the thug leader walked away from her body, he said they would continue with their plan. He shared a cruel idea. After they were done with Celestia, they would feed her to monsters and use the enraged creatures to cause chaos. Then they would finish their task of assassinating the saintess. Celestia lay on the cold ground with a ball of water covering her face and slowly drowning her. At moments like this, when death was close, no memories should have come to her mind. Yet a memory still surfaced. Before his change, a young Ix had been trained to use a sword by a young Celestia. It was an order from the master himself. He refused to quit even for a single day and would knock her to the ground when she taught poorly. One day he looked straight at Celestia and asked for another chance. She then beat him badly. She looked relieved for some reason. The pain came later. He kept asking her to spar day after day. After many days, she finally noticed something. She stared at him in silence. Ix asked if she was fine and wondered if something was wrong with his face. She then laughed loudly at his bruised face filled with bumps and scars. The memory faded and Celestia thought of her master as an idiot. The thug leader removed the water ball from her face and stood over her again. He asked if she was ready to give up the information. He said he would start by breaking her fingers. As he lifted his foot to crush her hand, his body froze. He suddenly felt a heavy flow of mana nearby. He wondered if it belonged to the knight captain or a knight from the church. That should have been impossible since their plan should not have leaked. The mana he felt was far darker than expected. Ike suddenly appeared and stood in front of Celestia. He calmly greeted her and asked if he had worn the outfit correctly. Celestia looked up at him and called his name. The thugs assumed he was the captain's son based on how he looked. They had heard he was a fool with no friends despite being a noble and that he had no talent. They mocked him for running away from the saintess and called him a coward. Their words struck deeply into Ix's soul. He dropped to the ground and felt crushed by the attack of their insults. As she tried to stand up, Celestia urged him to get back. However, she could no longer stand properly. Ix caught her before she fell. He remembered an event from the game that started the main story. The attack on the saint was supposed to be done by simple bandits. However, the real attackers were from a group called Dialis. They were a cult that fought against the Church of Mellisto and followed the slogan "God is gone." The thug leader was shocked and demanded to know how a noble child could know such things. The thugs then started attacking. Celestia became worried because her master only had magic as weak as a candle flame. Ix told her to stay calm and assured her that he was stronger than they were. In his mind, he recalled that magic had different ranks. He pictured the levels clearly. There were beginner, intermediate, advanced, and the highest tier, ultimate. He knew that the higher the rank, the larger and stronger the magic became. He also knew that while steady and hard work could help someone improve, reaching the highest level still needed natural talent. But Ix was different. He had no talent at all. Because of that, he tried copying the main character training method. He exposed himself to the magic he wanted to master so he could grow stronger with it. His affinity was red, which meant flame magic. By bathing himself in flames, he pushed past his limits. It was real torture, but because of it, the once talentless Ix, who could barely reach beginner mana levels, had now reached advanced magic. Celestia could not believe what she was seeing. The master she thought was weak suddenly summoned a horned flame giant using advanced primary color magic. He cast a spell called Anima Incarna. With a simple instruction from its master, the fire giant attacked and released a powerful blast of flames that could turn people into ash in seconds. The thugs stood frozen as they faced great power. Their leader jumped high into the air to escape the fire. Ikem stayed calm and told him to turn and run. The thug leader became angry and refused to retreat. He shouted that the saint who refused to heal them was beyond the flames and that he would make the boy pay for his proud look. Ix remained calm as he held his maid close in his arms. He said he understood the man's reason, but the thug suddenly realized it was the end for him. His face twisted in fear as the flames grew stronger. Ix said the man had made a fatal mistake. He had touched his maid. Ix swore to make him pay for it. The thug stood frozen as the flame giant reached out with its huge mouth. When it touched him, the thug exploded. When the flames faded, Celestia asked her master why he had come to save her. Her question made Ix smirk. He carried her on his back and said he only wanted to show her what he could do. He had hoped someone who wanted to kill him would appear. Celestia pouted, but she noticed his shaking hands as he carried her. She smiled and leaned forward to hug him tighter. Ix could not tell her that he felt something was wrong and became worried. It did not match his nature. He then said he could not ignore a troubled girl standing in front of him. This made Celestia smile. Ix carried her out of the burning forest. The thug's burned body stayed on the ground. With his maid safe in his arms, Ix took a slow breath as her fear finally faded. He looked ahead with a fierce smile and declared that no one should ever look down on him in this fantasy world. A year passed. In a place called the Ancient Sky Castle, Celestia, now older, watched part of the castle that had exploded. She remembered that it had been a year since that event. She also remembered her master saying that he would become stronger. As she moved closer, she saw a huge dragon's body lying on the ground. Half of it was burned by strong flames. On top of one of the dragon's horns stood Ix. He announced proudly that he would keep getting stronger, so no one in the world could ever defeat him. Celestia looked at him and noticed how much he had changed. Ike said that the change came from his strong will and constant effort. But as he stood up, the horn he was on broke. Celestia watched her master fall, and his voice disappeared as he sank deeper. She realized that even if her master had changed on the outside, his mind and determination were still the same. It was a known tale that the hero was blessed by a goddess and struck down the demon king with a legendary silver blade. It was the fairy tale that everyone who played the game would know. In the present, two women stared at a painting. One commented on how all knights seemed to admire the hero. The other, a nun, stared closely, confessing her love for him and wondering what kind of man he truly had been. She was positive that he was a wonderful man. It has been 2 years since our protagonist reincarnated as Ix Bandale. He was a villainous character destined to die at the hands of the heroines. He trained to prevent that from happening. Right now, a party to celebrate the anniversary of the Night Order was happening, hosted by the Bandale family. Despite the crowd, Ix chose to stay alone in a corner. He had been forced to attend the party after Celestia assured him that no saints would be there today. At first he felt relieved, but now he realized it was harder than he expected. He could only cry quietly. This was understandable since his past self had been hated by many people. Just then he noticed a crowd nearby. A jester was telling the story of a wicked hero whose heart had been changed by the deep love of his maid and who had defeated his enemies. Everyone listened closely to the jester, but as Ix got nearer, he recognized the voice. When he looked closer, his jaw dropped. He could not believe what he was seeing. The jester was Celestia, and she was telling the story of her and her master from the past. She described how the hero had used his sword of flame to defeat his enemies and save his maid. She even said how the hero had shouted for no one to touch his woman. Everyone listening gasped in excitement. A nun asked Celestia what happened to the hero and his maid. Celestia admitted her heart had raced while telling the story. Ix became angry and demanded to know what she was doing. Celestia stopped and walked toward him. The others then looked at him with cold eyes. Ix understood why the nobles stared at him this way. His past actions were still affecting how people saw him. This was harder to handle than he had expected. Ix wondered why she was even doing things like this. Celestia ignored the nun who kept trying to learn the next part of the story. She said that no one would care and mentioned how he had somehow decided to attend the party. Acox confirmed that he did come, since she said a saint would not be there. But his face turned pale and his eyes went white when he finally noticed the nun nearby. Celestia tried to act like she did not notice. The nun then acted familiar and greeted Ux. She said it had been a while. The female knight behind her added that it had been a while since the famous water incident. Ix broke out in a cold sweat. He was not imagining what he was seeing. The nun was no ordinary nun. She was a saint of Mililisto, Emilia Garrett. She had the goddess's grace and could use grand healing magic. The other girl was the daughter of Marquise Carmine, Alice Carmine. The Marquise ran the largest company on the continent, and Alice had connections with many world leaders. In the game, depending on the player's choices, these heroines could kill the villainous Ix Ayaz. He had also had his own share of trouble with them before. Ix realized he had no choice but to run away. Celestia felt disappointed when her master managed to escape. Alice noticed how noisy Ix still was. Emilia said she liked the continent because it had the largest knight's order. She also guessed that the future hero might come from this continent. Alice, with a blank expression, agreed. She then noticed a female knight walking toward them. The knight apologized for their future captain. She admitted it was not much of an apology, but she invited them to join the daily hunt. Alice knew the Bandiel's Knight Order only had children and strong but simple soldiers. On top of that, Emilia was a cute but foolish girl. The saint felt excited at the thought of going on an adventure. This was the same saint who had water dumped on her by Ix once. She was the Saint of Mellisto, a faith with the largest number of followers on the continent. She was born with a healing ability that seemed miraculous and had more authority than any king. Despite that, she stayed neutral on most matters because she was one of the key maidens chosen by the goddess Mellisto. Saints blessed by the goddess had great power, and if anything happened to them, it could lead to war between the kingdom and the Church of Mellisto. As they went hunting, everyone was easily defeated. Alice had expected this, but she still could not believe she had made a mistake. Meanwhile, Ix was alone by the riverside. He stared at his reflection in the water, which showed how he looked in the past. He blamed that version of himself for causing too much trouble before. Even if his current self tried to fix things now, it would not make a difference. His fate was already decided. No matter what he did, he was meant to cause trouble and die. This happened in every path of the game. Now he only had about half a year left before the main story at the academy began. He did not care much about the game's story, but knowing his life had only 1 to 3 years left made him feel sad. For now he tried to forget that because he had a visitor. He stood up as a monster appeared behind him. It was the ruler of the skewered frost corpse, the Fog Lunial. X shouted that he did not want to die in such a fun world. He drew his sword ready to fight. He even apologized to the monster in advance, knowing he would make it his next meal. But the monster suddenly looked to the side and ran away. Ix was left confused. At the same time, someone was riding a beast, fleeing from something. Salacia appeared and pointed out that the monster seemed to be trembling in fear. Ix said there was only one reason for a strong monster to run in fear. Just then a girl's voice called out, urging someone to hurry. Ix asked who it was, and it turned out to be Emilia and Alice. Emilia told him to get as far away as possible. She said they had been spotted by a dreadfully powerful monster. Alice grabbed the beast's reins and said she would get the saint out of that place. Ix was left behind and heard loud noises from behind. He looked around trying to understand what was happening. Some knights were thrown into the air like pieces of paper. Seeing this reminded Ix of an event from his previous life. Before that, he had been doing things the original Ix never did. This happened before the game's story even began, so he did not think he had much effect on what would happen. However, the situation was changing in ways he had not expected. His eyes grew wide with shock as a monster called Yotun appeared. This monster was known as a Saint Eater. Ix remembered it as a secret boss, one that had made countless players give up trying to defeat it. The monster had very high attack power and would relentlessly target characters of the Saint class. In the second half of the game, it only had a small chance to appear if a player chose the Saint route. Ix could only assume that somehow the Saint had lured it to him. Somehow it had appeared even before the game's main story had started. He felt confusion and fear as he tried to understand what was happening. Cecilia asked him to wait for a moment. Ix noticed her searching through a huge bag and wondered what she was planning. She seemed to be preparing to help the injured people who had fallen. She also seemed confident that the sword she had just pulled out was stronger and more reliable. She offered the sword to her master, knowing he would go and save everyone. Ix exclaimed that he would only do it for the experience points. He also said it would be a good test of his current strength. That was all. Meanwhile, the two girls who ran away were finally cornered. Alice tried to protect Emilia. They checked on each other to see if they were still safe. The beast they were riding had already been caught by the Yotun. Emilia admitted that she knew it was her fault that they had met this monster. Alice told her not to blame herself and drew her sword. As the Saint's Knight, she swore to protect her at all costs. However, Emilia felt that the situation was very wrong. A saint was supposed to be protected, not to stand behind someone else. The Yotun then moved in to attack. Emilia remembered that saints were called saints because they were powerful. During the day, she healed people without hesitation. At night, she memorized as much scripture as she could. It was tiring work, but it was still far easier than defeating the Demon King like the hero in the legends. Her favorite part of the story was always the beginning. The hero appeared before the saint of that time, Cornelia. The saint had looked troubled when the hero came asking for her help to save the world. Emilia knew someone like that hero would never appear before her. Still, she had Alice, who stayed by her side and listened to her worries. This world was full of many kinds of people, those she liked and those she disliked. There were even people she could not save. Even so, she believed her power had been given to her so that one day she could save everyone. Emilia then stepped forward, shocking Alice. She used her intermediate holy white magic and summoned a holy spirit called Holy Shinring Remasupero. At that moment, Emilia's own fighting ability was weak. She protected herself with a barrier. The Yotun's attack was blocked. Emilia closed her eyes when the impact hit, but when she opened them again, she saw another summon made of raging fire. She stood frozen in confusion as she stared at the blazing horned giant. Ix then appeared and said how beautiful everything looked. The girls were left speechless by his sudden arrival. He said he liked Amelia's accessories and then looked around, saying he would gladly welcome a party like this anytime. Amelia was shocked to see him and asked why he did not run away. Even Alice looked surprised. Ike said the food that chased him earlier was not very good, so he escaped from it. He then said the one standing in front of him looked like a proper main dish. The Yotun snarled and raised its claws at him. Ike asked why he should run and pulled out his sword. Alice doubted that he could handle such a monster alone. Ike said they would soon see. He rushed toward the monster and challenged it to a fight. The monster attacked at the same time. Ike dodged its tentacles and moved closer, then slashed its face. The monster was hurt but acted as if nothing happened. Ike noticed how calm it remained. He stepped back and used his red magic. He wondered how this spell would work and then cast Flashfire Detonus. The magic exploded on the monster, but it quickly grew back the parts it lost. The girls were shocked. Ix realized this was the same Yotun from the game. That could only mean one thing. His flames burned stronger than ever. Ix felt excited because this monster would give a huge amount of experience points. Watching him fight left the girls in shock. They wondered if this was really the same Ix Bandil they knew. But Amelia's shocked face soon turned into fear when Ix's sword broke into pieces, and the monster's tentacles pierced his body. Ix fell to the ground and cursed as he tried to stand up. He knew a secret boss-class monster would not be easy to defeat. Even with his wounds, Ix still smiled. The girls ran to Ix's side. Alice asked if he was alright. Amelia moved closer and offered to heal him. Ix pushed her aside and told her to step back if she could not fight. Amelia answered that even if she could not fight, she still had the power to save him. She used her holy magic and a holy spirit appeared behind her. Her healing power flowed into Ix. The pain and wounds across his body slowly faded as his strength returned. His breathing steadied and his grip became firm again. Ix smirked and thanked her. He took Alice's sword and relied on her support. He knew he could not strike a final blow with weak power. His fire strength was still one step short. He used his usual self-suggestion. He declared himself the strongest villain and set the borrowed sword on fire. When Alice saw her sword burning, she quickly thought about the cost of replacing it. Ix knew his body had no natural talent. His mana had grown from harsh training, but he still had poor control over it. The power he used damaged his own body, so he had never pushed himself to full strength. This time was different. Amelia stood behind him, the greatest healer in the world. He told her he would raise his firepower, and if he failed, they would all turn to ash together. He asked her to stand with him and called her his heroine. That made Amelia blush and freeze in place. Ix thought it was simple science. He used green wind magic with red fire magic and added pure oxygen to push the fire to its limit. Amelia felt flustered and asked him to wait. Ix believed it was like sealing a flame inside molten rock and compressing it until the heat became trapped at more than 6,000 degrees Celsius. A shining silver sword then appeared in his hand. The monster paused when it saw the weapon. Amelia was shocked because the sword looked like something from fairy tales. She saw the image of a hero overlap with Ix and she stared at him in awe. Ix glared at the monster and said he did not understand why it appeared so early. He declared that it was time for the monster to leave the stage. He then released his advanced mixed color magic, the white-hot proclamation flame sword, Malicio Ix Vance. He swung the silver sword once and the monster was destroyed. The girls stood frozen as they watched Ix. When the flames faded, only empty land remained in front of them. Everything had been burned into nothing. Ix said he had overcooked the main dish. He knew he had shown off too much and quickly felt awkward about it. He turned toward the girls while keeping a calm face and asked if they had seen his true strength. The girls could not answer and only stared at him. Ix felt even more awkward and ran off by himself. Amelia was left standing in silence. When he got back home, Ix received scolding from Celestia. She asked why he did not ask the saint to heal him. She could not believe he acted calm even after the backlash from his spell. She called him foolish while she wrapped his burned arms with bandages. Ix only pouted. He silently thought about how the real Ix once felt jealous of Saint Amelia because of her fame. Alice had been chased by Ix because he had feelings for her. That later led to his end. At the same time, his trusted sword was destroyed right in front of him. When he thought about it, that same sword had been Celestia. He quietly stared at her. She said that all he would get from staring was the sight of her face and nothing else. Ix agreed and said she was very cute. This made Celestia blush. She could not believe he dared to say that, so she assumed his injury had already healed. She pulled the bandages tighter, which caused Ix even more pain. Meanwhile, Amelia and Alice left on their flying carriage. Alice noticed Amelia looking out the window and wondered if she was thinking about Ix. Amelia admitted that Ix had looked impressive earlier. Amelia also asked if they were the same age as Ix. Alice confirmed it. Amelia then believed they would meet him again at the academy. Alice agreed with her. Amelia said she could not wait. Soon, everyone would gather and meet at the Careed Lily Academy. During the academy's opening ceremony, the teachers welcomed the freshmen to Careed Lily National Academy. A female teacher said they were here to study for the Fenelia Kingdom. With that, the enrollment ceremony ended. 3 years had passed since the protagonist had been reincarnated as Ix, a video game villain who was meant to be killed. Finally, the start of the main story of the game, the beginning of school, had arrived. Ix smirked, feeling excited that the day was finally here. His maid Salacia checked the list of enrollees and noted that all kinds of people were attending the academy. There was Leona, the second princess of Fenilia. Amelia, a saint of the world's largest church, was also there. The boy known as the second coming of the hero, Julius, was present too. And then there was her master, Ix, the most hated. She read the list while leading Ix, who was handcuffed and tied to her rope. Ix asked what was going on with the handcuffs. Salacia angrily told him that he would miss the ceremony if he did not wear them. She said she was in charge of watching him while they were at school because of his lack of common sense. If she failed, she would be expelled along with him. The fate of the villain Ix had already been decided. The heroines at the academy were meant to kill him. This made him consider skipping the academy altogether. But Salacia dragged him along since he did not want to meet any of the heroines. Suddenly, someone tapped him on the back. He turned his head and felt Amelia's pointer finger touch his cheek. She said it had been about a year and called him her hero. Ix realized she was Saint Amelia, the heroine who would kill him in the game. Shocked, he screamed as he saw that the real Amelia was standing right in front of him. He immediately ran away, dragging Salacia with him. Half a year ago, he had killed a monster that was attacking the saint and had said some bold, disrespectful things to her. He was sure he had angered her back then. Ix finally stopped running and looked around, trying to remember where he was. For a moment, he almost forgot. Then he realized he was at Kareed Lily Academy. He was in the world of a video game, probably the same one he knew. Angry, Salacia got back up in her canine form. She growled at him and asked if he had any last words. Icons asked if he could explore one last place. They went to the academy's central garden where the fountain stood. Salacia teased him, asking if he was taking her on a water date. Icons quickly said no. Unbeknownst to them, someone was sneaking behind. Salacia reminded Icons to apologize to the saint later. Icons said he remembered something from a book and tilted the dragon head carved into the fountain's base. The fountain rose, revealing a secret entrance. The person following them ran up to join them. Salacia was surprised to see the hidden entrance under the fountain. Icons explained that the academy had different layers. Amelia guessed it was like a dungeon and suggested going inside. Icons was shocked to see her there after he had tried to escape. Salacia scolded him for not greeting the saint and called him rude, warning he might get in trouble. Amelia told her to calm down and called Icons her hero. Icons looked scared and asked what she meant. Amelia reminded him that he had saved her and Alice 6 months ago. She said she came just to show her gratitude. Hearing Amelia mention Alice, Ix wondered where Alice was. Alice Carmine was another heroine in the game who would kill him. Since her family ran the world's largest merchant group, the church could only watch her from a distance. Salacia assumed Amelia had come all the way just to meet Ix. He guessed she had no friends, but Salacia shut him up. Amelia shyly told Ix to just call her Amelia. She suggested going into the dungeon. Ix told her to wait. Wearing a serious face, he said it was too early for someone like her to enter. He worried that something might happen, like her getting hurt, and told her to go back to the safety of the classroom. Amelia then pulled out her personal morning star. Ix was shocked and quickly apologized, thinking she had come to attack him. He could not believe what was happening to him lately. Amelia grabbed Ix and dragged him along. She ran toward the secret entrance and told Salacia to follow. The three of them entered the dungeon called the Fecundity Prison of Many Faces. Amelia noticed strings of webs everywhere. Spider-like monsters appeared and attacked. Amelia tried to fight, but Salacia cut them down quickly. Amelia was amazed by her strength and promised herself not to fall behind. Ix asked her to wait, but Amelia ran ahead to the front. Ix and Salacia panicked. Traps were everywhere, and Amelia set them off one by one. She got excited when she saw a treasure box, but it was a trap. Afterward, everyone looked worn out, but Amelia's healing magic kept them safe. Ix was amazed because her healing was faster than it had been 6 months ago. Salacia, however, felt restless even after being healed. Amelia apologized for getting too excited. She shyly admitted it was her first time doing something like this with friends and said she was just having a lot of fun. Ix had no words. Salacia teased her master, asking if he was happy to hear that since he also had no friends. Ix reminded her that she was in the same situation. Salacia said she had plenty of friends and even received an award from the knights for perfect attendance. She often had barbecues with the maids or went shopping with them. Ix was shocked. Suddenly, Amelia shouted to them. She found some pieces of a uniform. Ix thought a student might have gotten lost in the dungeon. Salacia changed form to use her strong sense of smell. She said the uniform was still warm and that she could smell a human on it. Amelia guessed the student must be close and said they needed to save them. Ix did not remember any event where a student went missing in the game. He wondered if the scenario had changed because of him. Just like before, he felt that something unusual was happening. Amelia ran forward, smashing enemies with her morning star. She soon found the student, a girl lying on the ground surrounded by monsters. Ix told her to wait because they did not know what dangers were ahead. Amelia ran to the student and said she would keep her safe. Suddenly, a shadow appeared above them. Amelia looked up and saw the dungeon boss. It was the false-face queen, Valzad. She used the shells of her dead kin as weapons to shred and eat her prey. This dungeon was meant for players later in the game. Since Amelia was low level, she was barely strong enough. Ix realized he had made a mistake again. Amelia told him not to worry about her, but Ix said he could not do that. The saint route was very difficult. She had to face powerful monsters and enemies that could kill them in one hit. The anti-Mellisto cult, Diolas, was targeting the saints, and there were top warriors who used to be part of the church. One wrong move could easily get the saint killed. In this world, which had become real for the protagonist, there was no continue button. Amelia summoned her Holy Spirit, Holy Shine Ring Remasupuro, and asked Ix to trust her. As the boss charged, she used her advanced Holy White magic. Ix's eyes widened in shock. She also summoned a world-class holy treasure called Militia Remasu to block the monster. She said no one would break through her again. A huge blast of light spread across the area. Ix recalled that in the game, Amelia was a healer and should have been at a low level at the current timeline. However, she had kept up with him earlier when he sprinted at full speed. She had also defeated monsters with her mace. Now she stood in front of a boss monster and blocked its attack. He guessed that she had trained for the past half year, so she would not fall behind in this harsh world. At that moment, he realized she was just like him. Amelia called out to him. She said she had worked hard to improve her healing and defense. However, she still could not get better at offensive magic. She asked him to defeat the monster for her. Ix decided that there was no other choice. Celestia had just finished clearing the smaller monsters. The boss then threw a sharp shard toward Ix. He did not move or blink. Before the shard could reach his eyes, Celestia blew it away. She told him to warn her if he could not move while preparing a spell. Ix said he trusted her and thanked her for saving him. He then told the girls to get ready because the next attack would be big. He gave Amelia a signal as he began casting his spell. Amelia held on and prepared herself. Ix then used his advanced red magic called Evil Blaze Lance Ixal Gladius. Dragons made of flames rushed forward and devoured the boss monster. The battle ended soon after. Ix celebrated, but the girls looked worried when the dungeon started shaking. Celestia scolded her master for using too much power. The dungeon was close to collapsing. Ix broke into a cold sweat. The girl they had saved thanked them for rescuing her. However, she believed they would all die together in the end. Hearing this, Amelia told everyone not to give up. She asked them to gather around her and said she would protect them all. Ix tried to explain that he had only planned to melt the monster. Celestia kept scolding him for putting everyone in danger. The dungeon did not collapse on them. A mage held up the falling debris and kept it from crushing the group. Ix looked around and noticed that the ceiling pieces were floating in the air. The mage then said that she had heard from other teachers that several students were missing. When she arrived, she found them together in what she called improper co-ed activity. Ix happened to be on top of the girls when she saw them. She said that he was just like the rumors she had heard. Ix quickly realized that this teacher was the one who stopped the rubble from falling. As he watched how easily she controlled the situation, he started to feel annoyed. The teacher called him insolent and dropped one piece of rubble onto each of their heads as punishment. After that, she told them to report to their homeroom teacher and say that they had been found by instructor Zenis. Ix felt that her name sounded familiar, as if he had heard it before. Zenis then looked straight at him and called him out. She told him to pay more attention to his heart since it was the source of magic. If he learned to control it well, he would become much stronger. Ixes said that he understood. In the end, what seemed like a dangerous situation turned out to be nothing more than a simple student rescue event. As they stepped out, the girl named Ix and the girls they had saved said the situation had taken an unexpected turn. She never thought she would run into a saint. She told Zenis that she could have simply left them there to die. Zenis said she could never stand by and watch her cute and valued pupil die. She reminded her of what had happened 3 years earlier. At that time, someone had acted without thinking and tried to assassinate Saint Amelia. The attempt failed, and the attacker was killed by an unknown person. The girl said she could not forget that event. She had even planned to cut them down along with the saints. Because there were still uncertain factors, Zenis said they had to change their plan. They needed to enter the academy and prepare carefully for the assassination. The girl said she had already learned a lot about Saint Amelia's strength. For her first mission, she believed it was already a big achievement. She also said everyone there, including Ixes, was stronger than they had expected. Even so, she believed their side was stronger. She claimed she could have slit any of their throats if she had wanted to. The girl turned out to be a member of Duzlis, known as the Gnashing Alot. Zenis said that if Alot had done it at that time, the deaths would have been treated as an accident. She reminded her that the day of Mellisto was approaching. Zenis then asked the others behind her if they knew what would happen if a saint died on the anniversary of Mellisto's arrival. She explained that there would be a meet and greet event for all first-year students and security would be light. Their small family of Duzlis had already entered the academy. Every member of Duzlis had gathered there. For the first time, they would carry out a mission together. However, after all the trouble they went through to sneak into the academy, Alot had almost exposed them. One member said they had changed their plans too many times. Another said it was risky to make contact with the saint in that way. Zenis said everything was fine. She assured them that her dear pupil had not exposed their identity. After all, the Melisto Church was not a single united group. Zenis herself was the leader of the organization. She was known as the Needle Empress. She reminded everyone that their mission would take place on the first day of spring during Melisto's Aurora, the day of the Dawn Festival. Their goal was to kill the saint named Amelia and reveal the name of Duzlis to the world on that holy day. They planned to turn the envoys of the goddess into sacrifices. Meanwhile, Amelia told Ix and Celestia that she would go to a different classroom for her class. Before leaving, she tried to get Ix's attention, hesitating to leave. He acted cold and distant, which made the moment awkward. Seeing this, Celestia slapped his back too hard, enough to break his back. The hit made Ix groan in pain, but it also pushed him to gather some courage to say something. He then said goodbye to Amelia properly and hoped they could see each other later. Amelia looked happy after hearing his farewell. After they went their separate ways, Kalacia started to wonder about the girl they had saved earlier. She asked what might have happened to her. Ix guessed that the girl probably went to her own class, just like the rest of the students. When Ix and Celestia entered their classroom, the other students quickly began to talk badly about him. Most of them had never seen him before, but they had already heard rumors that he was a troublemaker. They also noticed that he arrived late on his first day. Because of that, they assumed he was a spoiled and arrogant noble. Some students thought that if anyone made him cry, his parents would have them arrested. Hearing these comments made Celestia angry. She changed into her canine form and growled at the students to warn them. At that moment, someone shouted at Ix in a strict voice. The sudden shout made him break into a cold sweat. He quickly asked the woman to give him a break. The woman reminded him that he was a noble and yet he had already skipped class on the first day. She called his behavior shameless. Ix asked her to at least wait and scold him later. Seeing the girl curse at him helped Ix remember who she was. She was Claire Grace, the third daughter of Duke Grace. She had a strong sense of justice and wanted to become a knight. Ix remembered that she was not one of the heroines but a trusted ally of the main character. Claire became angry and questioned Ix. She asked how he could call himself an aspiring knight when he arrived late on the first day of class. Ix gave a casual apology and said he did not mean to offend her. Kalacia added that they had already apologized to the teacher. Claire could not accept their response. She reminded them that knight cadets from Vandil were meant to protect the royal capital. She pointed out that saying sorry would not help citizens who were harmed by bandits or monsters. Kalacia felt shocked because Claire's words made sense. Claire then said she could not believe they had come all the way to the capital only to act weak. The others stayed silent and looked nervous. Kalacia asked if Claire was calling them weak. Ix signaled for Kalacia to respond. Kalacia spoke up and said her master Ix could be dense, foolish, cowardly, and stingy. Ix ended up taking the insult. Still, Kalacia believed that her master was stronger than Claire. Claire called her rude and tried to argue but stopped. She clenched her teeth and asked if they were willing to fight her. Ix watched her without speaking. Celestia asked if Claire was afraid to fight with swords instead of words. Claire replied that a knight like her would never be afraid. The two girls moved closer until their heads touched. Celestia gave Claire a chance to step back and leave. Claire answered that a soft knight order from Vandil would not be a match for her. A strict male teacher appeared and stopped the argument between the two girls. He used a book to hit their heads to get their attention. He reminded them that their swordsmanship class would end the next day and told them to test their strength then. The girls agreed. Ike stayed in his seat and talked with the teacher. Then Claire turned to him and said it would be a duel. Celestia told her master to defeat Claire. Ike stood up in shock. He could not believe he was the one who would fight. Claire said that even if she was in a bad state, she would not point her blade at a commoner. Celestia asked what she would do if she lost. Claire said Ix could make her strip or become his servant. She told him he could choose what to do. She believed she would not lose because she followed justice. The teacher hit them again with the book and told them to sit down. That night, in the Vandil family manor, Celestia washed herself and asked her master if he really wanted to know about that matter. She already knew he did not need it. Icus asked what she meant. She said she was talking about the weak point of that thing. He replied that he did not need it. He smirked as he thought about how he already knew about Claire's falling out with her family. He felt there was no fun in using that to shake her and win. If he remembered right, something had happened at Claire's home a year before he enrolled. There had been a duel to decide the order of strength. Claire lost to her younger sister. In the Grace household, strength meant everything. Claire stood frozen in shock after her loss. House Grace was made up of large men and women who looked rough and strong. Even their dogs were big. Claire was different from them. The family led the Grace Knights who fought villains and monsters and guarded the borders. Claire wanted to grow stronger and be useful to her family. She even took on tasks others did not like, such as clerical work. Later, the head of the family, her father, told her to go to the academy because she was different. He said she was smart and should see a wider world. Claire did not hear the last part. Her thoughts were clouded. She believed she was being pushed out of the house in a kind way. Because of this, she wanted to become stronger and stand beside her family. She believed that if she improved at the academy, they would accept her. She trained hard every day. She knew that if she lost at the academy, she would not get another chance. She could not afford to lose again. The next day, Ix and Claire faced each other in the academy courtyard training grounds. Claire said she had heard that Ix used to be useless. Ix replied that it only meant anyone could become stronger. At the same time, Arlette walked through the crowd and asked if anyone wanted to bet on Ix. She said the bets were not even yet. One student said the Grace family had an amazing battle record. Another said they had never let any enemy pass the border and Claire already had real combat experience. A third student said the Vandil name was once known as the strongest, but it was damaged by the Sun's bad reputation. The students agreed that betting on Ix would not end well. They believed the only thing worth watching was the fight itself. Then someone raised a hand and said they would bet on Ix. Arlette was surprised when she saw who it was. It was the saintess, Amelia. She was glad to see Arlette doing well. Alice sat beside her. Ix drew his sword and complained about the noise. Claire said it did not matter. She believed she could cut down anything with one strike. Ix told her to begin. Both of them took their stances. Wind gathered around Claire as she raised her sword above her head. Ix stayed calm and held his sword upright in front of him with a steady smile. Claire said he was wrong if he thought he could stop her attack. However, Ix had already prepared a way to counter the Grace-style swordsmanship. The night before, Ix got beaten by Celestia. She won again. She said she had only shown him the basics of the Grace-style swordsmanship. She explained that the user strengthened their body and stepped forward with full force. When used, the red hair moved like fire, which was why people found it beautiful. Ix felt confused and asked how Celestia could use it. She explained that someone from the Grace family had been sent to their place long ago. Ix thought that person had taught her. Celestia said she had simply copied it. She watched it once and understood it. She reminded him that her body could not release magic outside, so she could only use reinforcement magic. It was just how her body worked, but the style suited her well. Ix was still worried about getting a perfect win. He thought about using his strongest move at the end. Celestia told him to try his best. In sword matches, Ix had won most of the time because she trained him. Ix stood up again and asked for more training. Celestia said with confidence that she would add another win to her record. Back in the present, Ix said an enemy only mattered if he faced them head-on. He stood firm as Claire rushed at him at high speed. She shouted as she used her family's sword style. Ix expected her to attack like that and felt sure because he had a counter ready. However, he did not expect her sword to move so fast. Claire used a move called Thunderclap Slash. Ix was surprised by her speed, but he still managed to dodge at the last moment. Her attack struck the ground instead. The crowd was shocked by how fast Claire moved. They thought the Grace-style swordsmanship and the Grace family's reinforcement magic were too strong. They began to insult Ix and hoped he would lose the fight. Claire took a deep breath and regained her focus after her attack. She realized that Ix had dodged her strike. She started to overthink. She wondered how he avoided it. She questioned whether her timing was slow or if there was another reason. She stopped when she noticed she was overthinking again. She knew that if this continued, she would repeat what had happened before when she lost to her younger sister. Her move Thunderclap Slash used a lot of stamina and left her open. She was now vulnerable. The spectators could not see what was happening inside the arena because a cloud of dust covered the area. They assumed that Ix had already died. To hide her weakened condition after using her technique, Claire also created a large cloud of dust. She then checked for Ix and saw him standing with his sword still in its sheath, his hand near the hilt. This confused her, and she asked what he was doing. Ix explained that he knew her technique needed time to recover, so he had been waiting. Claire became angry and treated his words as a weak attempt to provoke her. However, this technique was her only option, so she launched another attack. Ix responded by saying the next round had begun. As Claire charged toward him, Ix remembered how, in the game, this move looked like a simple straight charge. In reality, he understood the truth behind it. Claire used wind magic to boost her speed and then switched to reinforcement magic. If she failed to control her magic properly, her body could be torn apart. It was a dangerous technique to use. Even thinking about it made Ix feel uneasy. Ix often thought about death. Since he had reincarnated as Ix 3 years ago, a villain meant to die at the academy, he kept wondering if he would die no matter what he did. However, during battles, he was able to forget those thoughts. In those moments, he showed a focused and excited expression, which surprised Claire. Ix then drew his sword and struck. He broke Claire's wooden sword, sending fragments flying. Claire realized that Ix had used a variation of the Thunderclap Slash. She noticed that he applied wind magic only to his sword, not his body, and understood that he had used a sword draw technique. She could not remember him showing anything like that during her first attack. She found it hard to believe that he had learned and countered her technique so quickly. Claire lowered her head and accepted her defeat, then fell into a seated position on the ground while Ix stood behind her. Everyone watching became silent for a few seconds in shock. Soon after, they began accusing Ix of tampering with Claire's wooden sword. They claimed the match had been rigged and demanded refunds. They could not believe he had gone so far to win. Ix became angry and told them to stop, questioning why things always turned out that way. Alice reacted with a smirk after winning. Amelia also received her winnings but was more focused on the noise from the complaints, which made it hard for her to hear anything clearly. Arlette also received her share of the winnings. A black-haired boy watching from a building through a window also won, and a girl with a crown observed the match from a guarded room. Back in the arena, Claire said that she was weak. X did not respond. She repeated that she was weak and asked why X was strong. In response, Ix firmly grabbed her left arm and helped lift her up, which surprised her. He told her not to feel discouraged. He explained that the effort he had put into planning with Salacia to counter her would have seemed pointless since it would not work a second time against her. He then picked up her sword sheath and returned it to her. He pointed out that if she had not hesitated during her first strike, she would have won the match. Even so, he did not see her defeat as a true loss, since he believed that real loss only happened when someone died. He added that as long as she was alive, she still had the chance to grow stronger. His words helped Claire realize something important. She asked him if he believed she could become stronger. He made it clear that anyone could improve. Claire smiled and accepted his view. Suddenly, Salacia arrived and announced that it was time for Claire to carry out her task. Her sudden appearance startled Claire. Salacia then took hold of Claire and pulled her away. Confused, Claire asked what was happening. Salacia explained that it was time for Claire to begin her role as a servant as part of her punishment. Later after school, Ix was surprised to see the girls again. Claire was complaining to Salacia about the outfit she had been given. She said she could accept the maid uniform, but the one Salacia provided was incomplete. The outfit exposed most of her skin. Amelia was also there and looked shocked. Claire continued to complain that the uniform had very little fabric. Salacia told her to wear it as part of becoming a Vandil servant. Claire became upset and promised to make Salacia pay for the humiliation. More importantly, Claire wanted to ask Ix if she could truly become stronger. When she turned toward him, her movement caught his attention and he quickly tried to look away. Salacia then changed her mind and said that Ix was not allowed to look at Claire. Amelia was surprised and looked at herself in comparison. Claire then held on to Ix and asked again about how to become stronger. Amelia suggested that Claire wear the Holy Maiden outfit instead. Salacia stepped in and covered Ix's view to stop him from looking. The situation only stopped when a teacher arrived and used his book to hit them, telling them to go home. Meanwhile, in the academy's back alley, Alice was surrounded by other students. She complained about how noisy the Vandilis were. A student who closely resembled Ike spoke up and blamed Alice's report for causing the loss of her inheritance and future plans. She explained that her goal had been to become the next Vandili Knight Commander. Soon after, Ike found himself in the middle of the girls as they argued. Amelia asked why Claire wore a maid outfit on her day off. Claire said Salacia told her that wearing it would make Ike give her extra training later. Salacia was unsure if she really said that. Claire then asked why everyone else wore casual clothes. Amelia said she wanted to hide her identity by dressing normally. Salacia said she wore casual clothes because it was her day off too. It had been 3 years since Ix was reborn as a villain who was supposed to die in the game's main story. The story had already begun, yet Ix found himself sitting with the girls, enjoying coffee and bread. He still could not get used to the calm life, but he had a reason for being there. Claire remembered that Amelia only called for Ix and wondered if it was okay for her and Salacia to come along. Amelia said that having more people made things more fun. Ix remembered that someone had called for him through Amelia. It was Alice Carmine, the daughter of a marquis and the heir to the Carmine Company, the largest company on the continent. This meeting marked the start of the conflict between Ix and the main character Julius. It was another risk that could lead to his death. Ix already knew why Alice had called him, and his face turned pale as he remembered the past. When he was younger, he caused trouble with a proposal incident. Later, he melted Alice's sword when he saved the girls half a year ago. He later learned that the sword was a famous heirloom. When Salacia heard this, she froze in shock. Since enrolling, Ix had avoided Alice. However, he could not refuse when Amelia asked him to come. Alice suddenly appeared behind him. Ix felt the tension in the air and turned to greet her. She welcomed him to her cafe, Adelheid. Ix was surprised to learn that the cafe belonged to her. Salacia told Alice that she still did not understand part of their lesson. Claire complained that Salacia always relied on Alice, but then she realized she also had something to ask. She asked about the rates for riding dragons this year. Salacia laughed at her. Amelia then wondered what she should ask Alice. Alice said Salacia was studying tax calculations and offered to help her later. She told Claire that the Grace family's dragons were large and in good condition, so even if the price increased by 20%, they would still sell well. She also told Amelia not to force herself to keep up with everyone else. Ix felt shocked. He did not expect the girls to get along with Alice. He understood Amelia, but the others surprised him. Claire asked where he had been going after class. Salacia said it was because of that they had been having girls' nights every day. Amelia also felt curious and wanted to go with him. Ix could not tell them the truth. He had been getting lost every day while feeling emotional as he saw scenes that reminded him of the game. He started to sweat and hesitated. He quickly changed the topic and asked Alice if she had called him because of the sword from half a year ago. Alice asked what sword he meant, then remembered the heirloom blade Carmine. She said it had already been taken care of and that there was nothing to worry about. Still, she and the others knew it had not been solved at all. She leaned closer and said he would soon understand why she had called him. For now, she told him to relax with everyone. Ike's kept the conversation going. He asked Claire if she was used to doing housework. Claire said her family was bad at clerical tasks, so they had made her handle them since she was the most capable. Ix tried to continue, but he noticed people staring at them. Others in the room had recognized him. They began to panic and told each other to leave before his temper caused another arrest. One person said a friend had been taken by the knights even though he was innocent, all because of Ix. Ix and the girl stopped talking. Kalesha, who had her face on an open book, asked if she should go and punch those people like before. Ix told her to focus on studying. He thought that no matter where he went, things were always like this. The Vandil Knight Order handled the safety of the royal capital and held great power. People said the Vandils were worse than villains. As Ix praised her coffee, Alice focused on voices outside. She heard someone move into the shadows and her face became serious. She pulled Ix over and made him sit properly. Then she asked for everyone's attention. She said she owned the shop and would not allow any bad behavior, even from Vandil. She told everyone to relax and enjoy themselves while the bread baked. She also said that if anyone caused trouble, she would deal with them herself. She spoke while fumbling her words. Then she pulled out a knife and said she would stab anyone who caused trouble. The customers froze for a moment, then started cheering. They said the shop was safe under the Marquis's protection. They said Vandil was nothing to fear and thanked Alice for making them feel safe. Ix also thanked her and the girl smiled at her. Alice said that when Ix saved her before, she knew he was not a bad person. Then she realized she might have gone too far while trying to look cool. Claire said it was still good. Salacia realized there were better ways to silence people than fighting them. Alice then smiled in a sly way and said this could help her build connections with the Vandillas and House Grace. If she also gained the Saintesses' approval, her shop's future would be secure. Ix felt surprised when he saw her cunning expression. Amelia said Ix sometimes made that kind of face too. Alice then turned to Amelia and said she was worried that Amelia had not made friends. She told her to try to make some for the future. Amelia explained that people usually avoided her, but Arlott had always been kind to her. Ix thought she meant the girl Amelia had saved during the entrance ceremony. Claire asked if they were talking about the underground dungeon. She said she wanted to fight too. Alice told them to wait a bit longer because she was still working. She said everything was free while they waited. Ix agreed and said he would stay. Since it was Alice's shop, they were connected in a way. This place also felt important to Ix. In the shop, players could buy and sell many things, from healing items to gear. No matter the route, players always came here. When the battle between the hero and the villain began, players who followed Alice's route faced enemies as strong as those in the Saintess route. The area was full of danger, with shady merchants, mercenaries, and an arena. Somewhere out there, the main character would find a way to handle everything. Ix tried to remember how the event in the shop had started, but someone suddenly stepped inside. The girl looked almost the same as him. She told the shop to hand over the magic tool called Soundstone to the Vandils. Two tough boys stood with her. Alice said they had finally arrived. Ix then remembered what had happened in the game. His own underlings were supposed to enter the shop and do this. He paused. He did not expect the event to happen this soon or in this way. The girl reacted to Alice's report and said she had lost her inheritance. Alice answered that it had been the girls' group's duty to take care of the Saintess while they were away. She said she had wanted to avoid a bigger problem. Ix remembered that the main character, Julius, was supposed to save Alice during this event. But Julius was not in the shop. Ix also felt he knew what would happen next. Alice then said this was why she had called him to the shop. Ix had no choice but to agree. He had already changed the events and gone off the original path. He said he felt uneasy when things did not follow the plan. The girl said she would handle things properly so he would not worry. Ix felt surprised that Lalies, who usually followed orders, spoke back to him. Lalies told him not to act like a good person now. Alice apologized to Ix and said she did not want trouble with the Vandillies. Ix said it was his family's problem. He added that she could leave the rest to him. Alice agreed, though she looked surprised. Ix said things would get messy. Lael said they would deal with it the Vandillas way. She drew her sword and said it would be a duel. She and her group would risk everything. If she won, she would take his position. Her companions got ready to fight. Ix said he did not care about rank, but he would not step back from a duel. Salacia also got ready. Ix then said he would fight all three of them alone. He said he wanted to show how strong he was. Alice told them to take the fight outside the shop, so they went to the nearby road. Ix faced Lacia's and her two followers. As Amelia watched them, she noticed that Ix and Lacia's looked alike and seemed familiar with each other. Lacia's had the look of a jealous girl. The others moved to an outdoor table to watch. Salacia explained that Lacia's came from a branch family and was technically Ix's cousin. Claire then realized that Ix would look like that if he were a girl. Kalacia complained that the bread tasted bad because of Lele's. She then asked what a soundstone was. Claire explained that it was a magic tool that let people communicate over long distances. Amelia realized she could use it to call someone at night and wanted one. Claire told her to calm down because it was not simple to get. She explained that users needed perfectly matched magic stones and the price was higher than a noble's yearly income. Amelia felt disappointed. Alice stepped between Ix and Lele's and said that House Carmine would oversee the duel. Ix apologized for his friends being loud. Lele's reacted with anger. She reminded him that they once enjoyed beating up troublemakers and now he had changed. Ix said he remembered those times, but he admitted those days no longer felt right to him. Lele's lit her blade on fire and asked what he meant. She used a beginner red magic spell called Flash Fire. A fireball flew from her blade toward Ix. At the same time, one of her allies used earth magic, and another rushed forward with a greatsword. Ix watched all three attacks at once. He knew the plan was simple but effective. He cut the fireball in half. At that moment, the swordsman rushed in without stopping. Ix understood the situation. The real danger was not the swordsman but something else. Lele's jumped from behind her ally and rose into the air. She used an intermediate red magic spell called Ignaris Flame-Piercing Blade. Ix knew she planned to strike with a strong attack after he dealt with the swordsman. However, Lele's and her ally were surprised when Ix suddenly disappeared from view. The swordsman then realized Ix had moved below him. Ix slid along the ground and struck the swordsman's chin with a rising kick. Right after that, he used a long-range magic attack to defeat the earth mage at the back. Alice was surprised to see how Ix fought. Now only Lele's was left standing. She knew she would lose anyway, so she decided to take one of them down with her. She attacked Alice using the same magic spell she had failed to use on Ix earlier. Alice stood still, confused and unable to react. The attack hit directly. However, she stayed unharmed. Her hat flew off from the force of the air, and Ix caught it. He actually stepped in front of her and took the hit on his back. After that, he checked if Alice was hurt and gave her hat back. Alice felt flustered but said she was fine. Ix felt relieved when he heard that. This time, it was Lele's and her group who would suffer. Her underlings managed to stand up again, but Ix decided to use a magic spell he had created himself. It was made for someone like him who struggled to control magic well. He held Alice in place and pointed his burning sword at Leela's group. They felt confused when they saw threads of fire spread across the area. Leela's noticed that the flames did not burn anything they touched. Ix drew red lines on the ground and sent magic through them. Then he activated the spell, causing the lines to explode. This was his special red magic called Evil Binding Blaze. He made sure Alice stayed safe and told her that those people would not bother her again. He then asked if what he did was enough to pay for the coffee he had. Alice said that if that were the case, she would end up giving him a lot of change. Layla's group looked fine, but they clearly looked like they were unable to fight any further. Ike said he had held back his power and told them they should at least thank him for that. He then asked Celicia what she thought of his new spell. He sounded like a proud student asking his master. Celicia looked serious and knelt before him while holding his personal sword. She presented the sword while addressing him as the eldest son of House Vandil. Ix wondered why she was acting so formal and serious when he had already shown enough strength and felt satisfied. Calacia explained that Lele's and her group had drawn their blades against Ix, someone from the main house, and had been defeated. She said they needed to be punished to protect the house's honor and prestige. Claire added that unlike her duel with him the other day, this fight was considered official. She believed a light punishment would damage the Vandil name and encourage others to do the same. Amelia stated that the Milas Church would not get involved in the duel or its result. Alice reminded him that Lele's had risked everything in the fight. Ix held the sword and felt its weight grow heavy. 3 years had passed since he had been reborn as the villain Ix. He looked at Lele's and her followers as they struggled on the ground with pale faces and cold sweat running down their faces. He thought that one wrong move could have led to his own defeat, even death. He also knew that when people tried to kill each other, they had to accept the risk of being killed. That thought was enough for him. He looked at his sword and remembered his role as Ix Vandil. Trouble still lay ahead, yet he had gained comfort in people who served him. There was a price for that. He stepped toward Lele's and told her to kneel. He raised his sword and said he no longer cared about the family's knights or power. Then he swung the sword and drove it into the ground in front of her. He declared that he would not allow them to touch Alice again. He said they were now under his control. He warned Lele's and her followers to never think they could regain their freedom. Alice felt surprised when she heard him say those words for her. Calacia had no words. Lele's and her group looked like they were about to cry. X asked if everything was fine. Calacia looked like she had no choice but to agree. Claire and Amelia smiled. Alice thanked X. He reminded her that she had said she would help with things like this anytime. Alice then remembered something and asked everyone to sit and wait for a moment. Calacia called a messenger bird and told Ix she would take Lele's group to the main house. Ix thanked her in advance. Ix leaned back in his seat and relaxed. He thought about how this was supposed to be Julius's event. This was also the start of his conflict with Ix Vandil. He wondered what would happen if Alice or any of the heroines got hurt early. The thought scared him. Claire also sent something using a messenger bird. Alice suddenly appeared and gently called out to Ix while touching his cheeks. The other girls were shocked. Alice reached out from Ix's right ear and placed a soundstone in it. She asked him to pour magic into it and speak. She reminded him that he had promised to help her any time, so she planned to call him whenever she needed him. She had the matching earring in her own right ear. Ix agreed. The girls behind him looked jealous. Alice then wondered if there were new ways to use the soundstone. She had brought it from home and questioned how the rumor about it had started. On the way back home, Ix complained about how rough his day had been. Amelia agreed and said her heart had been pounding the whole time. She confirmed that she had healed Ix. Then she excused herself to return to the cathedral. She waved goodbye and said she hoped they would meet again at the academy. Ix turned to the other girls and said it was time to go home. Salacia agreed. Claire asked what they would eat for dinner. Ix remembered they still had the large bird from before. Then he realized Claire had been staying in the dorms. Claire said she had already finished the paperwork. Since Ix was taking Lele's and the others, she thought he should take her as well. Ix felt unsure and asked why she wanted that. Salacia felt surprised. Claire felt happy because she would now receive special training every day. Ix thought that something that should have happened in a certain way had now changed. He did not know how this change would affect things later. More importantly, he wondered where the main character had gone. Soon after, he and the girls rode a carriage. From the roof of a building, a man in a hood and mask watched them. He said he did not expect things to move just by spreading a rumor about the soundstone. However, everything was turning out differently from the story he knew. He did not expect the boy who was supposed to be the villain to act this way. He had already listed the people involved. These included the 3 holy maidens of the Millist Church, Deuslis and its people, and the House Vandil. He had expected a 3-way conflict, but things were becoming simpler. He removed his mask and said he would speed up the story as he had first planned. The masked man was the main character, Julian Guerin. At the same time, rumors spread that Ix had brought his followers to Alice's shop and caused trouble for her. Ix became angry and asked how things had turned out like that. Sometime later, in her office, Zenis reminded Arl that the day of the saintesses' assassination was getting close. She told her to get closer to Amelia before that day came. She also warned her to stay in control if they ever ended up alone together. Soon after, Arl ran away from something and asked if this situation counted as being alone. Amelia ran beside her and said sorry. She explained that the trip was supposed to be simple. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by zombies in a cemetery. 30 minutes earlier, the academy had started its yearly spring field trip for first-year students. The trip took place in the forest of Kamura, near the royal capital. Zenis, who acted as their teacher, reminded everyone of their roles. The battle arts students had to protect others. The divine students had to care for others. The commerce students had to earn profits. She told them they could bring back anything as proof of their trip, such as monster corpses, gemstones, valuables, or even food. Ix showed a dark smile. He thought this was the moment he had been waiting for. He remembered that this event always happened no matter which path the player chose. In the story, the main character Julius went on an adventure with his friends during the field trip. Then Amelia was taken to an old castle. The player had to chase after her and climb the castle, which was filled with traps. At the top, a strong enemy waited. It was the boss of Glaff Tower, a creature called the Greedbound Guardian Gruz. It was a golem that had several cores, and all of them had to be destroyed at the same time. If Ix faced it alone, he would have struggled. But luck seemed to be on his side, as the girls noticed his evil-looking smile. Zenis started calling the members of each group who would explore the forest together. By chance, Ix ended up in the same group as Amelia and Arl. 2 other battle arts students named Haldo and Mile joined them as well. The 2 looked familiar. When Ix saw that Amelia was in his group, he realized they would eventually reach the old castle. With Amelia's healing ability, he thought he could push his way through the golem guarding it. If he defeated the golem, his evaluation would surely rise. As he thought about this, a sly smile appeared on his face again and the girls noticed it. A man suddenly appeared and introduced himself as Ordo, an instructor from the divine class and an archbishop of the Millist Church. Before the trip began, he gave the students a warning. He told them not to go near the old castle area. He explained that every year some students went there and never returned. He also said that the forest held relics from ancient times and past wars, along with old forts and graveyards filled with the undead. He warned that many hardships would stand in their way, but he reminded the Divine Millist group to never forget their doctrine. Amelia looked excited, while Arl had a serious expression. Ordo gave one final reminder. He told them to always keep their neighbors smiling. After that, he signaled the start of the spring field trip. Ix eagerly set off with his group. As he moved forward, Julius suddenly ran past him and smiled. The moment Ix saw him, he froze. The boy in front of him was the protagonist of the game. Since the story had already started to change, Ix wondered what he should do next. He knew that one day they would face each other. After all, Ix was a villain. Still, he believed there would be no problem if he became stronger than Julius. He even imagined Julius crying in defeat. Just then, someone called out to him. Alice called out to them and told them about what she had in her shop. She said they had potions, food, maps, and knives. She told them they could come and shop anytime. Amelia felt happy when she saw her. Ix did not expect that the commerce students were the ones providing the gear. Alice explained that they would only be graded by checking the value of monster materials and similar items. She then thought that the girl with them was Arl and gave her some sweets. She also gave something to Amelia and asked her to wear it. Ix pointed at himself, hoping to get something too, but Alice ignored him. Instead, she called out to Haldo and Mile. The two boys flinched because of the trouble they caused at Alice's shop before they lost to Ix and became his underlings. Alice gave them bags filled with food, medicine, maps, and weapons. She told them to do all their shopping at her shop. If they did that, she would forgive what they had done before. Ix wanted to ask about his share, but he ended up getting nothing. He had already expected that, so he simply dragged the two boys away with him. Before they left, Alice asked Ix to take care of Amelia. Arl thought the trip would be easy because there were Vandil knights and a holy maiden with them. She explained that she could only treat small injuries, but with Amelia around there should be nothing to worry about. Curious, Ix asked Arl if she had done something wrong recently. He pointed out that she somehow ended up in a group with troublesome people. Arl then looked at Amelia and said she was the reason. She explained that students in the divine class believed that being close to the saintess was dangerous, so they avoided Amelia. However, Arl was the only one who still talked to her. She shared that they often talked about Amelia's problems, like how to change clothes or how to use the toilet. Amelia became embarrassed and rushed toward her, trying to stop her from saying more. While she covered Arl's mouth, Amelia asked Ix where they were going. Ix laughed in a dark way and said it was obvious that they would go to the old castle. He said that if they defeated whatever was inside, everyone would be afraid of their team. The others stayed silent. Amelia reminded him that they had just been told not to go there. Ix said that people had already been talking about him, and now even the saintess had bad rumors about her. He believed they could silence those people by showing their strength. Haldo thought that Ix wanted everyone to see that the Vandil knights were protecting the saintess's honor. Mile found that idea romantic. Ix became annoyed and started chasing Haldo. The girls then took the lead. As Mile followed them, he mentioned that Julius was also heading to the old castle. Ix and Haldo suddenly stopped. Ix realized that Julius was going in the same direction. He told everyone to hurry and said it was time for the Ix expedition team to prove themselves. As they moved forward, Amelia told Ix that Salacia might feel upset since she was not on the same team as him. Ix laughed and said that Salacia was not the type to get emotional. Meanwhile, in another part of the forest, Salacia led a team made up of girls. Claire thought that Salacia might feel sad about being separated from Ix. Lacia's agreed. Since the two had been together since they were children, Salacia looked at them with a serious expression. She said that she may have acted loud and eaten a lot lately, but now she finally had a chance to show her true strength. Claire doubted this and pointed out that Kalesia had been skipping training sessions with Ix. Ledvils then asked Claire if she really did not know. Salacia suddenly pointed her sword at them. Claire felt confused and asked what was wrong. A monster with a sharp snout suddenly appeared and attacked them. It aimed for Salacia, but she quickly dodged. Claire felt shocked to see such a monster in the forest and wondered why it was there. She told the other girls to step back. The girls from the divine class moved away, but Lele stayed and said she was fine. Claire warned that even a few knights would have trouble fighting that monster. Lele's then calmly asked Claire if she knew about the 6 special knights of the Vandil Knight Order. In the Order's 1,000-year history, the highest rank below the commander had always been the titled knights. For the first time, a new title had been created for a commoner like Salacia. She was already set to receive the title of Black after graduating. Salacia fought the monster on her own. She was known as a natural-born fighter, the ill-omened Black Wind and the bringer of fire. She was the Black Knight, Salacia. Claire felt shocked when she learned this. Since the titled knights of Vandil were known as the strongest of all, even Salacia had not expected to learn the truth about herself. Lacias became annoyed and asked why Salacia did not know this. After hearing it, Salacia remembered that her family had told her they would pay for her school and that she only needed to study and graduate. Claire also remembered that graduating was needed before starting work. Lacias looked like she was getting a headache. After hearing her title, Clacia decided to name their team the Black Knight Expedition Party. She promised to show Ix her true strength. Claire did not expect Salacia to act like this. Lacia said that Clacia used to act like a wild dog, and she wondered who had changed her. At the same time, Ix felt nervous for some reason. His team set off toward the old castle with excitement. He imagined defeating monsters and returning in victory. Mile warned that they would end up in serious trouble if they kept going like this. Haldo also felt worried that their clan would find out. Ix could not believe they had lost track of the girls. It had not even been 30 minutes since they started, but his team had already split up and gotten lost. Ix asked the two boys if they had seen where the girls went. Haldo said he had only looked away for a moment, and when he looked back, the girls were gone. Miles said he had been checking the magic traces the group had been leaving on the ground. He was sure the girls were heading toward the old castle. However, the trail they left did not go straight. It curved in many directions. The ones who went missing were the two girls from the divine class. Ix asked Mile to explain what he meant. Mile said there was a high-level Milas-style ward in the forest that pushed people away. Ix understood and guessed that something important was nearby. He complained that these troublemakers were making things harder for him. Even so, he smiled, as if he enjoyed the situation. At the same time, the girls were on their own. Arl pointed out that they had been separated from the boys. Emilia already knew there was a ward in the area. The two of them soon reached a graveyard. Arl thought this might be what the Archbishop had warned them about. Amelia then said she felt like something was calling them to that place. Arl realized she was finally alone with the saintess. She moved behind Amelia and tried to attack her. There were no teammates or guards around, so it seemed like the perfect chance. Suddenly, Amelia stopped and called out to her. Arl felt surprised. However, Amelia only wanted to say how excited she was to be on an adventure like this. She said her heart was beating fast. She told Arl to stay behind her and to watch her steps for traps. Arl assumed that this was what saintesses were like. She saw them as cheerful no matter what happened. Even so, she could not forgive Amelia. She called her an airheaded girl and blamed her for her parents' deaths. She swore that she would kill her in that place. Her plan was suddenly interrupted by strange noises behind them. The girls quickly turned around and saw a group of undead appear out of nowhere. They carried weapons and wore armor. Amelia acted right away while Arl stood there unsure of what to do. She wondered if she should attack Amelia during the chaos. However, she knew that showing too much power could ruin her mission. Before she could decide, Amelia pushed her aside and took the attacks herself. Blades from the undead pierced her from all directions. Arl wondered if Amelia had just died like that. To her surprise, Amelia moved. Even with blades stuck in her body, she asked Arl if she was all right. Arl confirmed that she was fine. As Amelia stood up again, she apologized. She said that things like this often happened when someone stayed close to a saintess like her. She also said she would feel very guilty in moments like that. Arl was shocked that Amelia survived such a sudden attack. Amelia admitted that all she could think about was how to apologize, even while forcing a smile. Then she began to gather her magic power. She said that her words about saving everyone were not always true, and she even thought it might be better if she disappeared. The undead tried to attack her again, but spears made of light struck them and stopped their movements. Amelia said that her hero had taught her something important. She then used her beginner white magic, Light Blade Liberium. A blade of light cut through the undead. After that, she used her holy white magic, Mirashial Lux Holy White Grace, to heal herself. She said that if she became strong enough to defeat everything in their path, then that would be enough. She stood there with confidence, as if she had not become a barbecue just moments before. Arl was shocked and fell to the ground. She had just witnessed the power of a holy maiden. Someone blessed by the goddess. Amelia's healing ability was far beyond Arl's own skills. Amelia reached out her hand to help Arl stand up. Arl wondered if someone like Amelia could really be killed at all. Still, she took Amelia's hand and commented on how amazing her healing power was. To Arl, it seemed impossible to kill a holy maiden. As Amelia removed her robe to sew and repair it, she revealed that there was actually a way. At first, Arl agreed that a holy maiden seemed to have no weakness. Then she suddenly realized what Amelia had just said. Amelia quickly understood that even knowing this information was dangerous. She explained that there had been rumors about an assassination group targeting her. Arl became curious and asked if Amelia could tell her, saying it was only because they were friends. Amelia looked surprised and conflicted for a moment before asking Arl to keep the information secret. She then revealed that inside the cathedral was a weapon known as the Holy Maiden Killer. Amelia had tested it herself by lightly poking her finger with it. The wound did not heal, even with magic. She then showed Arl the small scar left on her fingertip. Arl remembered that the Cornelia Grand Cathedral was located at the center of the Mylist faith, and only chosen people were allowed to enter. That was exactly what Zenis had been searching for. After fixing her robe, Amelia put it back on and said she might bring Arl there with her, as long as they both managed to leave the cemetery safely. Arl felt excited at the thought and looked forward to it. 10 minutes later, Arl complained that they had already crossed the entire graveyard based on how far they had walked, yet somehow ended up back where they started. Amelia looked around before walking toward a corpse. She opened its stomach and examined the inside carefully. Arl complained about how dirty Amelia's actions were. Amelia then asked if Arl used white magic. Arl denied it and covered her eyes in disgust, saying white magic was only useful for small things. Amelia pointed out that the undead were using the cocoon on their backs as a focus. She also questioned the strange hole in the corpse's stomach. After examining it, she realized the zombies were being healed by white magic. She then noticed that the source of the magic was coming from a nearby old church. Amelia also discovered that a ward had been placed around the area to hide something inside the church. At that moment, she realized that whatever was sealed inside the church, and was likely the source of the zombies, was calling to her. Amelia concluded that it was protected by a powerful barrier that prevented anyone from entering from the outside or escaping from the inside. Because of this, anyone who accidentally wandered in became a zombie, allowing the secret to remain hidden. Arl was shocked after hearing this. The girls went inside the old church and looked around. Inside, they found many beds and shelves filled with medicine. It became clear that the place had once been used for medical care. Arl complained about the terrible smell inside. Amelia then noticed several corpses and wondered if the place had been connected to diseases or strange experiments. Hearing this made Arl freeze in shock. The place looked very familiar to her. Suddenly, Amelia greeted someone and introduced herself as a holy maiden before asking for a name. Arl was shocked when she saw a huge fluffy creature nearby. A woman stuck out from a giant cotton-like body. In a weak voice, she introduced herself as Solvia. Amelia moved closer and asked what Solvia was doing inside the church. However, it quickly became clear that talking would not work. Solvia began acting wildly while repeatedly saying the words, "Holy Maiden." Amelia and Arl stood frozen in shock as Solvia finally revealed her true form as the boss monster of the area, Saint Silkworm Holy Maiden Solvia. Her fluffy body opened up and revealed many arms and legs. Some of her hands held a giant staff and a huge chalice. She attacked by gripping the staff with both hands and swinging it like an axe. At that moment, Arl finally understood what this village really was. Many years earlier, a secret church of Alarate had celebrated the birth of a baby with an incredible amount of magical power. They thanked the mother for giving birth to a child with such rare potential. If the baby also had an affinity for white magic, the Alarate family would finally have their long-awaited Holy Maiden. The baby that was born at that time was Arl. Arl then remembered that the old church she and Amelia had just visited looked just like the graveyard in her hometown. The secret church of Alarate was one of the bases of the Millis Church. Arl was born there as the only daughter of the local lord. The unusual thing about her was the large amount of magic power she had from birth. She lived as a faithful believer with her parents. However, her peaceful life with her family ended suddenly. Everything changed the day her parents discovered that Arl had an affinity for white magic. Mylist was the chief god of the Mylist faith. In the beginning, she existed to support the hero who defeated the Demon King. All holy maidens received blessings directly from her. The first holy maiden was Cornelia, who appeared more than 1,000 years ago. Since then, each generation has produced a few holy maidens. Over time, the Mylist faith spread across the continent of Argast. There were 2 requirements to be chosen as a holy maiden. The first was making a great contribution to the Mylist church or having an exceptional talent for white magic. White magic, known as the magic of healing, was rare because very few people had any talent for it. However, those chosen as holy maidens always had a strong affinity for it. Arl's parents strongly believed she had what it took to become a holy maiden. They were sure she would receive Mylist's blessing. A bishop examined her and said her affinity was low, but her magic capacity was average enough for a holy maiden. Because of this, he chose her as his 3rd candidate for the plan. From that day on, Arl's life changed completely. She was made to wear a habit and restraints as her regular outfit. A leash was placed around her neck and she was often pinned to a table with a gag in her mouth. 2 sharp Chris daggers were placed on the table while each of her parents held one. Her parents believed all of this would help her improve. They wanted her to increase her white magic affinity so she could receive divine grace. Arl suffered as her parents injured her arms and forced her to heal the wounds with her magic. They pushed her to heal quickly before the cuts could leave scars. Even after her arms were wrapped in bandages, the experiments continued. Her parents kept testing methods they had learned from the bishop. Alone, Arl quietly cried. She remembered being told that her purpose was to make the people around her happy. But no matter how hard she tried, Mylist never seemed to smile at her. Her parents also forced her to swallow a magic stone taken from a monster, believing it would raise her affinity. When nothing changed, they became frustrated and decided to increase the amount. They had also heard rumors about a girl named Amelia from the south, someone with unusually high affinity. This only made them more jealous and desperate to improve Arl. Arl grew more and more anxious. She believed that if she failed to become a holy maiden, she would disappoint her parents and let others down. In protest, she stopped eating. In response, her parents punished her and pressured her even more, accusing her of bringing shame to them before the goddess. As time passed, Arl slowly stopped thinking about everything. One day, her parents suddenly woke her up. They dragged her through the church, where dead people lay scattered around after being pierced by sharp objects. The bishop was the one behind it. He had used magic to kill the villagers. He was pleased that the Amelia girl they once failed to assassinate had finally become a holy maiden. He said it was only a matter of time before an investigation reached their village. Since Arl had turned out to be a disappointment, he decided to wipe out the entire place. Arl and her parents eventually reached a cliff. Looking at her then, they finally noticed how thin and weak she had become. They apologized because they had failed to make her a holy maiden. Then they pushed her off the cliff and into the raging river below. Before she fell, they wished for the goddess to smile upon her. As Arl fell, she watched the bishop kill her parents with magic. She did not know who he truly was, but she understood one thing clearly. The goddess had abandoned her. The bishop looked down from the cliff and complained that their plans involving Jotun and Solvia were not going well. He mocked them as weaklings connected to the artificial Holy Maiden project. Not long after, a man found Arl. He noticed that she was still breathing and called for Zenas. Zenas was annoyed and questioned what was happening on that island. She complained that someone useless kept throwing their problems onto them again. She then told Einar to bring the girl to their safe house. Arl was cared for until she was able to walk again. Once she recovered, she peeked outside her room and overheard the adults talking. Zenith said Arl could be useful because of her large amount of magic power. Einar argued that Arl was still just a child. Zenith replied that she already knew that. When they noticed Arl listening, Zenith suggested they all go outside for a short walk to clear their minds. By chance, it was the day of the new Holy Maiden's inauguration ceremony. A young Amelia was being paraded through the city. Arl watched as Amelia waved at the crowd. To Arl, Amelia felt close enough to see, yet impossible to reach. She stayed quiet while Zenith and Einar comforted her with gentle pats on the back. The existence of the Holy Maiden had already caused pain for many people. Arl remembered how her own parents had also fallen apart because of the Holy Maiden. She could not help but think that things might have been different if Holy Maidens had never existed. When Zenith asked what was wrong, Arl admitted that she could never forgive Amelia for sitting there as if nothing had happened. After that, Arl began training with the group that had saved her. By coincidence, her new family also held deep grudges against the Milas Church. Many of them had suffered through heresy hunts or had been forced into questionable fundraising work. More importantly to Arl, she had found a new family. Einar and Zenith became like new parents to her. However, that peace did not last long. Zenith tried to stop Einar from leaving, but he had already made his decision. Even someone as kind as him joined an assassination mission targeting a Holy Maiden. Since then, he had never returned. Because of this, their group, Dewsless, changed its plans and decided to infiltrate the academy instead. Arl was the only one who could enter as a student without raising suspicion. That was how she eventually got close to the Holy Maiden. At the academy, while becoming friends with the Holy Maiden, Arl never expected to meet someone who had gone through a life similar to hers. When Sylvia started attacking the girls, Amelia quickly hugged Arl and pushed her away to protect her. Flying debris struck Amelia's back and injured her. Arl became worried, but Amelia brushed it off and acted as if even a serious injury would not be enough to harm a Holy Maiden. Amelia explained that both this church and the other one were connected to the dark side of the Milas Church. Even so, her main concern was keeping Arl safe from danger. As Arl watched, Amelia gathered white magic in her hands. Arl gritted her teeth and decided she would not let Milas be the one to protect her. Her real name was Arl Alarate, the only daughter of a former lord. She released an overwhelming amount of magic power that rivaled a Holy Maiden's strength. Arl had been trained by elite warriors of the highest level. Although she was the youngest member of the organization Dewsless, she was already considered one of its strongest fighters. At that moment, memories of her time with Amelia came back to her. After they became classmates, Amelia often teased her for not being able to dress herself properly or handle simple daily tasks at school. With the strength Arl now had, she believed she no longer needed the help of any gods. She rushed forward and kicked Sylvia in the face. Amelia stared in shock after seeing how powerful Arl truly was. Arl suddenly blurted out a harsh comment without thinking. The moment the words left her mouth, she quickly covered her mouth in embarrassment after realizing how rude she had sounded. Amelia was surprised for a moment, but then found the situation so funny that she burst into laughter. She could barely stop laughing, clearly amused by Arl's unexpected words. Arl stood there awkwardly, unsure of what to say next. After calming down, Amelia admitted that it felt like this was the first time they had truly talked to each other. Arl became flustered, and could not understand why Amelia was bringing that up in such a dangerous situation. Amelia simply laughed softly, as if everything was fine now. Meanwhile, Arl remembered that once everyone turned into zombies, everything would supposedly be resolved. Amelia said that if they did that, the Holy Maiden would also turn into a zombie. She explained that Holy Maidens were basically zombies from the start. Arl said she could not understand the jokes rich girls made. Amelia told her not to worry because the hero would arrive in time. At that moment, Sylvia was about to stomp on them. Confused, Arl asked what Amelia meant by hero. Suddenly, the ceiling broke apart as someone loudly cheered while making a dramatic entrance. He then complained that trouble always seemed to follow them wherever they went. Amelia apologized to him. However, Ix said he was thankful to Amelia for hosting such an exciting party. He openly exclaimed his love for her. Hearing this shocked Amelia so much that she fainted. Arl quickly tried to wake her up. Ix started to take charge. He ordered Haldo and Mule to deal with the weaker enemies first. Then he looked around to see who they would be fighting. At that moment, zombies began crawling out of the ground. Ix got scared and felt disgusted by them. He let out a high-pitched scream and quickly hid behind Amelia. He said the zombies looked creepy. Amelia laughed and told him that a hero should not be afraid of anything like that. Ix felt confused by her words. She pushed him forward again and repeated that a hero should not fear anything. Ix was surprised that Amelia had started talking back to him. Still, he did not expect the boss to get angry. Amelia then mentioned that Sylvia also used white magic. Ix suggested that he and Amelia fight together like before. Amelia refused and said they would fight as a trio this time with Arl. Ix looked confused, but Arl immediately moved into action. She said she would break the boss monster's stance. Solvia tried to fight back. In this world, there were two ways to use magic from within the body. One way was to circulate it inside the body to increase strength and resistance. The other way was to release it outward. When magic was released, it could take forms like fire or water. Ix and Amelia joined the fight. The way magic came out depended on the user's body and natural ability. White magic mainly strengthened or enhanced other magic. Arl had one clear specialty she could boost, which was impact. She punched the boss monster and broke its stance. Then she twisted in midair and kicked Ix forward. She said she would leave the finishing attack to him. She landed behind Amelia, who was already casting a spell. White magic was especially powerful in another way. Amelia cast an intermediate white spell called White Dominion Ring on Ix. When white magic was mixed with other magic, it would make it stronger. Ix felt the power boost. He praised Arl for her help and then asked Amelia to proceed. With Amelia's magic supporting him, Ix used a high-level combined spell called White Blazing Flame-Piercing Flashblade. A large white flame shaped as a blade shot forward. If white magic came from a holy maiden, its power would increase even more and could fully destroy the enemy. Ix, Amelia, and Arl stood confidently after winning the fight. On their way back home, Ix said they owed Alice a lot. He explained that the Soundstone helped them track Amelia and Arl's location. Alice then appeared to welcome them back, along with other Divine Class students. She called out to Amelia. While everyone stayed busy checking on each other, Ix quietly watched Arl. Arl kept thinking about everything that had happened while she traveled with Amelia. Ix leaned closer and told her he felt relieved that she was safe. Arl said she would have been in serious trouble if anything had happened to the Holy Maiden while they were together. Ix quickly made it clear that he had only worried about her, not Amelia. His words surprised Arl. At that moment, Amelia excitedly talked to the others about what had happened and called Arl over to join them. Ix then admitted that he actually felt bad for Arl because she had been stuck listening to Amelia's non-stop talking. Just imagining it already exhausted him. Arl almost misunderstood what he meant. After things finally calmed down, Ix sat alone and thought about something from the game. There had been a mid-boss with a fighting style and name similar to Arl Slain. Still, he believed they were different people because the mid-boss had a different last name. Even so, the strange graveyard continued to bother him. That place had never appeared in the main story. He wondered if it had been hidden lore that never made it into the game. Pushing those thoughts aside, Ix asked why the girls had gathered near him. Claire and Leylas had been trying to comfort Celicia. Claire explained how they defeated something like the Lord of the Forest. Leylas proudly said their team probably ranked higher than Ix's group now. Ix found it surprising to hear Leylas speaking casually outside official situations. Embarrassed, Leylas quickly tried to correct herself and return to a formal tone, but Ix told her to relax and speak normally. After that, Leylas shared how Julius had defeated the old castle golem by himself. Because of that, their team placed second. Ix was stunned by what he heard. When Leylas asked how his team performed, he still could not stop thinking about Julius. The protagonist had defeated a boss monster that should have been impossible to beat so early in the original story. Claire started thinking that Ix's team also got amazing results. Ix's face turned pale. Leylas asked what was wrong. Ix quickly turned to his teammates and loudly asked if anyone had brought something back. The others looked just as shocked. By then, the instructors had already finished checking the items the other students brought back. There were also no casualties. The instructors concluded that this year's first-year students were impressive. Then they asked Ix's team what they had gained. Ix and his teammates raised their fists and nervously answered that they gained bonds. The instructors gave them 0 points for friendship. Later, inside Duzlus's hideout in the Eastern Ruins district, Arl's angry voice echoed through the abandoned church. Zenis told her to calm down since Arl did an even worse job while giving grades during the field trip. Arl kicked some handmade plushies. Zenis quickly warned her not to hurt her cute shark plushies. Arl complained about Amelia's overly cheerful attitude. She also complained that Zenis never cleaned her room. Zenis picked up one of the plushies and told Arl to calm down first. Arl punched the plushie and shouted that they were in a holy war. She told Zenis to stop getting along with Amelia. If Amelia was truly their target, then Zenis should just admit it. That way, Arl could avenge her parents and even Einar. Zenis remembered that Einar had been like a father to Arl. Einar Slain was one of the founders of Duzlus. However, when it came to him, Zenis was hiding one important secret from Arl. At that moment, Zenis asked Arl how Ix was doing. She noticed that he had been showing more of his real strength lately. Arl confidently said that she was still stronger than him. Even so, she admitted that he was not as bad as the rumors made him seem. Zenis then suggested that Arl could still leave everything behind and enjoy a normal school life instead. Arl stayed silent for a moment because she could not believe what she had just heard. Soon after, she became furious. She told Zenas not to mess with her because during the field trip she personally saw what happened to people like her. Because of the church and the holy maidens, their lives ended up this way. She said that if she lost that purpose, then everything she had lived through until now would have no meaning. Arl then remembered that Zenas had other plans besides Amelia. She asked Zenas to give the mission to Alterate instead of Arl slain. Arl declared that she was currently the strongest member of the team. She wanted to take part in the operation against the third holy maiden, Softie. The next day during class, Zenas announced that school would end early because of several reasons. She told everyone to head home soon after classes ended. Ix felt lucky after hearing the news. He thought Amelia would be happy too, but something seemed wrong. Amelia looked down and apologized quietly. Before leaving the classroom, Zenas told Ix that he had a special assignment. Surprised, Ix asked why she picked him. Zenas reminded him about how he had been acting lately. She said his magic control was messy and he relied too much on powerful attacks that left huge openings. Using her magic, Zenas floated above him and stared down at him. She asked what he would do if he faced someone stronger, smarter, and more experienced in battle. Ix told her to just explain what he was doing wrong. Zenas said his fire giant looked impressive but lacked real power. She also pointed out that his red threads were always too slow. Shocked, Ix asked how she even knew about those techniques. Amelia then admitted that she had bragged about him to everyone. Meanwhile, Arl stayed quiet. Zenas clearly ignored her on purpose. Arl wondered what Zenas was planning when the assassination of the third holy maiden was already underway. Zenas reminded Ix again that the assignment was his responsibility. Ix dropped onto his desk and complained, asking why it was always him. Zenas answered that it was because he ranked dead last. Ix tried to ask what she meant, but Zenas ignored him and walked away. Suddenly, Cilicia said they had a problem and shoved a document in his face. Ix tried to ask what it was, but Cilicia punched him while still holding the paper. It turned out to be the school newspaper. The headline of the week called Ix a jester. It said he was worthless for making the Holy Maiden finish in last place during the field trip. On the other hand, Julius was praised for defeating a golem alone. It also mentioned that Claire got second place and might even have the Vandals under her control in the future. Ix could not believe what he was reading. Cilicia and Claire also looked at the newspaper and were happy to see their names on the front page. Lele's felt sad because her drawing was smaller than Cilicia's. Cilicia, on the other hand, was pleased to see herself featured. Claire wanted to get a copy and send it back home. Ix finally understood why Amelia had been feeling down. Claire asked if Ix had not heard anything that morning. She explained that the carriage carrying the third holy maiden, Softie, for next week's Dawn Festival had been attacked. The holy maiden was now missing. Ix apologized to Amelia and said he had not known about it. Amelia told him she was fine. She even said it was a good chance to prove everyone wrong. Still, she felt sad because she had been placed on standby. Suddenly, someone claimed he knew a way if it was only about proving themselves. Ix was surprised that this person suddenly appeared in front of them. Julius then suggested a match, hinting that it would be interesting if the last place student beat the top-ranked one. Ix spoke in a proud tone and said they had finally met. This made Ix think deeply. Julius was the main character of the story, and he was technically Ix's enemy. However, with how the situation was changing, Ix did not know what would happen next. He then thought about it and asked Julius what he would get from making such a suggestion. The others were shocked to hear Ix say that. Ix then angrily told them not to act surprised that he could think. Julius then admitted he had been working as an adventurer recently. The job location was near where the Holy Maiden had gone missing, but the Vandal Knights had blocked the area. Ix then realized that Julius was trying to use him as cover. The match was only an excuse. Ix stood up and accepted the challenge. He moved closer and asked for the details. Julius said it was a monster extermination job in a ghost town. Ix assumed that whoever killed the most monsters would win. Julius said he could bring as many people as he wanted, and finishing quickly was better. He also included preparation time. As he walked out of the classroom, Julius announced the start of their match. Ix was glad that he had something to take his mind off things. He then went to Amelia and reminded her to keep her neighbors happy. He said he doubted Julius's job was going to be simple. Since Amelia's friend was feeling hurt, he invited her to come with him. He said they might accidentally get near the accident site. Amelia's expression brightened, and she agreed to go with him. Everyone soon went to Alice's shop and told her everything that had happened so far. While everyone ate, Alice gave a short summary of the situation. After listening, Alice angrily asked Ix if he understood what could have happened if he had taken Amelia outside during such a dangerous situation. Ix said that Julius told him to bring as many party members as possible. He also thought Alice could help them. Alice stayed silent for a moment. She then said she understood and walked away briefly. She came back with a box that contained 4 sets of communication magic tools called Soundstones. Since there was a blockade, Ix and Lele's were chosen as the main members because they came from Vandil. She told them to always keep track of each other's locations. Cilicia calculated the price of the items in front of her and was shocked. She said it was worth 160 times her annual income. Alice felt glad that her late-night math lessons had finally paid off. Alice was not finished. She reminded them that they were not acting as students on this trip. She gave them full sets of equipment. Ix was glad that Alice matched the mood of the situation. Celicia was also impressed by the quality of the gear. Alice reminded them that they would be going out as adventurers while using the equipment. Not only Ix and Lele's, but the rest of the group also received their own full sets. Ix asked if she was really sure about giving them all of this. Alice admitted she was planning to start selling adventurer gear in her business, and she had another reason as well. She pointed out that Ix and the others always ended up in dangerous situations. The others were surprised to hear this from her. Alice then asked them to return safely and promote her shop. Ix said he did not have a choice. Alice also said they had only recently become friends and she did not want them to separate so soon. The girls then gathered around Alice and hugged her. Alice told them to hurry up since they were in a race. As soon as they left the shop, Ix told Lele's to handle the checkpoint like it was an old nuisance. Lele said she understood but did not like how he said it. Ix then pretended to wander into the accident site by mistake. Emilia said they could not be blamed if it happened by accident. Ix and Emilia arrived at the accident site. While Emilia checked the carriage, a knight said the situation had become worse because Ix brought a holy maiden with him. He said the Knight Order had already taken over the search. He also said that sending the holy maiden was like challenging the knights. This was Noah, the Blue Knight from the Vandal Knight Order. Ix told him to handle the situation properly. Noah then complained about how dangerous the graveyard was that Ix had asked them to investigate. He also said they had run into the holy knights there. He added that those knights would look for any reason to fight, but he was worried the holy maiden could get involved. Ix said it would be fine. He said that if anything showed up, he would cut it down and handle the rest. Noah wondered if this was the same hot-headed man who had once fired a titled knight. Ix then went to Emilia and asked how she was doing. Emilia said she felt better and that she had been allowed to borrow a dragon carriage. Noah spoke loudly so the other knights could hear him and told them that none of them saw anything. Ix got on the dragon carriage and brought Emilia with him. He thanked Noah and said he was counting on him again. Emilia said she could walk, but Ix said it was time to leave. As Noah watched them leave, he realized the rumors about Ix changing were true. He only hoped Ix would not get involved in something even worse. They flew through the sky on a dragon. While riding, Alice contacted Ix and asked if he could hear her. Ix replied that he could hear her clearly. Emilia held tightly onto his back because she was scared of falling. Alice told Ix to keep moving in the same direction they were already going. Ix thanked her for helping coordinate everyone. Alice then asked what she was supposed to do when a friend came to her crying. Ix wondered who had been crying. Emilia, as the wind pushed against her face, reminded him how expensive the dragon was. Ix told her to just make the owner raise the price instead. Emilia shouted that this was not what she meant. The royal capital of Azabini in the kingdom of Fenilia was built 1,000 years ago. It started as a city built on top of the old Demon King's castle with another town below it. Over time, the layered city grew very large. The map of the city was far bigger than anything in the game. People even said that being born there meant you would get lost every day. Ix and Emilia were now flying over this huge city. Below them, many rogues and criminals moved through the shadows, always active and watching. Places that looked empty even without shadows were usually where monsters lived. Someone then told Ix that their target this time was a pack of draugrs. Ix told the others to lure the monsters into one spot. When they asked what he was planning, he said he had a strategy. Claire then took the lead and began guiding the monster horde toward them. At that moment, everyone heard Ix's voice from above, telling them to fall back. He cast a higher-tier primary magic called Soul Armament Manifestation, Anima Incarna. The undead monsters froze when they saw the flames coming toward them. Ix warned them to step forward if they wanted to get roasted. The others quickly ran away as the entire area was engulfed in flames. After the attack, Ix asked if it had worked. Claire said it would not. Confused, Ix asked what she meant. Aisha explained that these monsters were a real pain. They could heal themselves and kept getting back up as if nothing had happened. Ix quickly realized how troublesome they were. The others continued fighting the monsters, but Arl saw them as a great way to blow off some steam. She started smashing the monsters with her fists. Emilia realized they could look at the situation that way. Arl then pointed out that the monsters were the same type as Solva from before. Emilia confirmed that she could sense white magic nearby. Ix decided to investigate. Celicia asked if he needed someone to babysit him, but Ix said he would be fine. He then asked Emilia to support him from wherever she was while he went ahead and took out the boss monster himself. Using the communication device, Ix contacted Alice and asked if she had any idea where the boss monster might be hiding. At the time, Alice was holding a sword against a suspicious person. She asked Ix what he was talking about. Ix explained that the monsters were regenerating, so everyone assumed there was a boss monster controlling them. He then asked if there were any likely places where it could be hiding. The masked person standing in front of Alice told her to inform Ix that something suspicious was inside her shop. Alice calmly told Ix that she would check her side first and told him to continue ahead. Ix said he understood and ended the communication. Alice then raised her sword and suggested that they talk things out. She knew something about the situation was unusual. The person in front of her was wearing a high-grade mask that scrambled recognition, a voice changer around the throat and a cloak that blended into the surroundings. Every piece of equipment the person had was top-class magic gear. The suspicious person then explained that they would have loved to chat but they did not have the time. They were in a hurry. For now they made it clear that they were not an enemy. They then pulled out a short sword, ready to stab. Alice was caught off guard. Ike then received another message from Alice. She asked where he was currently located. Ike said he was in a plaza with a fountain. Alice told him that there was a church to the northeast of his location and instructed him to head there. She explained that it was an old church and warned him to be careful. She then gave him directions based on the map that the suspicious person had stabbed. Meanwhile, it was revealed that the suspicious person was actually Julius. As Julius ate some fruit for a snack, he wondered if Ix knew that happy endings don't exist in this world for a villain like him. Ix eventually found the broken church that Alice had mentioned. He was surprised by how badly damaged it was. Suddenly, a sword swung toward his neck. Ix barely avoided the attack by quickly leaning his head backward. Alice asked what had happened. Iska jumped down from his dragon and finally came face to face with the boss monster. It was the first knight commander of the Holy Knights, the Holy Knight Gun Girl. Isk then told Alice that she had gotten it right on her first try. Alice wondered if the masked person had known that the monster was there all along. She then worriedly asked if Isk was okay. Isk did not answer. Instead, he wondered what he should do next. He thought about what someone was supposed to do when they had to fight an enemy who was much stronger than them. The rotting Holy Knight, which had fused with its steed, suddenly charged toward him, quickly pulled the sword from his back. At that moment, he wanted to tell Zenith that he had finally found the answer. Gungirl swung his sword wide as he charged forward, with a hand shield on his other arm. Ix did not back down. He knocked the shield aside with his left arm and struck at Gungirl's sword with his other arm. Gungirl blocked the attack, but Ix used magic to keep the assault going. However, Gungirl easily cut through the magic attack, shocking Ix. Gungirl swung at Ix but missed. Ix moved above him and sent a barrage of fireballs down at the knight. Even so, the attacks were still ineffective. Holy Knight Gungirl had once been saved by a holy maiden and later founded the Millis Church. His current strength was only half of what he had possessed during his lifetime. The dragon seed he had ridden, his lifelong friend, and his legs had also rotted away along with him. Gungirl had lost more than a few battles. Yet no matter how many times he died, he always returned. Ix managed to throw the knight off balance, but Gungirl used magic to quickly regain his stance. He was simply carrying out his duty. Gungirl swung his sword wide and struck X, sending him crashing into a nearby building. X struggled to get back up. From that exchange, he had learned enough. Gungirl was far above him in both strength and experience. X knew he was going to die. He was slower and his sword skills were worse. Even so, X had decided long ago that he would overcome every obstacle in his path no matter what it took. He did not want to live any other way. X took his stance again as the Holy Knight charged toward him. Gungirl swung his sword with great force, but X's sword broke when Gungirl blocked it with his shield. X then used intermediate red magic to summon his flame-piercing blade. He leaped toward the Holy Knight and brought the blazing sword down on him. The technique was supposed to create flames in the shape of a sword. However, because of X's affinity, the flames became coated in lava, making the attack far more powerful. With that attack, X won. Still, he felt sad as he looked at his broken sword once again. However, just when Ix thought he had won, Gungirl suddenly stood up behind him. Ix could not believe he was still able to move. He decided to fight him again because there was still so much he could learn from Gungirl. But instead of attacking, Gungirl simply threw his sword toward Ix. Confused, Ix caught it safely. Gungirl then pointed at him, leaving Ix even more confused. He then pointed toward another direction. Ix followed his gesture and saw an altar at the end of the ruins. He tried to figure out what Gungirl wanted him to see, but Gungirl suddenly went silent and collapsed to the ground. Ix walked toward the altar and complained when he found nothing there. He then remembered that he needed to check on the others. Since Amelia was with them, he figured everyone would probably be fine, so he decided to rest for a moment. Suddenly, the top of the altar moved. Ix looked inside and immediately contacted Amelia through the communication tool. He told her that he had found a lost kitten. However, it turned out to be a young girl dressed like a holy maiden. Ix estimated that she was around 10 years old and had curly hair. When the girl heard Amelia's name, she nervously asked if he was talking about big sister Amelia. Ix suggested that they regroup for the time being. The girl then started comparing Ix to the description of a silver-haired boy she had read about in her sister's letters. She became excited when she realized that she was looking at the Silver Knight hero, Ix. Ix immediately cringed at the title and angrily wondered who the heck the Silver Knight hero was supposed to be. After hearing Ix's reaction, Amelia realized that the girl he had found was Softie. Ix then told Amelia that they needed to regroup because things were becoming urgent. Amelia asked why. Before Ix could explain, a group of people suddenly appeared in front of him. A man wearing an eye patch revealed that the Draugr were not the only ones blocking their path. The Holy Knight Gungirl was also there. The man then concluded that the rumors were true. Whenever a holy maiden was in danger, the Holy Knight would rush to her side. Eichels told Amelia that if they did not hurry, the battle would be over before they could even join it. He then calmly reached behind him and grabbed his sword. He complained that these insects just kept crawling out of the woodwork. The leader of the trio then ordered the others to make their move. Claire relayed Eichel's words to the other girls. They quickly realized that these might be the same people who had attacked the Holy Maiden. As soon as Kalacia heard this, she immediately rushed off without saying anything to the others. She had to get there as quickly as possible. She was a sword, and a sword that was never used had no value. Meanwhile, the man with the eye patch asked if the boy standing before him was Eichels. He had heard that Eichels was a deadbeat, so he told him to leave and said he would spare his life. Softie then told Eichels that these were the people who had attacked their carriage. Eichels asked if they were from Duslis. The man with the eye patch was surprised that Eichels knew the name of their group, but he said it did not matter. He ordered Ix to hand over the Holy Maiden. Before the man could say anything else, Ix unleashed a high-tier primary magic called Anima Incarna, Ix Soul Armament. Flames burst toward the villains in the shape of a huge dragon. The men quickly dodged the attack, but they were shocked by Ix's power. The man with the eye patch wondered what adults were teaching children these days. Ix apologized and declared that the fight was already over. He followed a simple rule: strike first and win first. Softie was impressed. She realized that Ix really was the Silver Knight hero. She then made up her mind and asked Ix to take her to the Grand Cathedral. Ix assumed she meant the Canelia Grand Cathedral, which was the stronghold of the Millis Church. It stood at the very center of the royal capital, Azabeni. Softie admitted that she was not as strong as Maria and was nowhere near as amazing as Amelia. She believed that her ancestors had been the great ones, not her. In her eyes, she was not worth much. Among the holy maidens, she was basically the spare of the spare. Because of that, Softie wanted to handle things without becoming a burden to anyone. She believed that if it was Ix, he would still help her even if she caused trouble. Still, she wanted to give him anything she could if he needed it. Ix smiled and told her to relax. He joked that he was already used to trouble anyway. Suddenly, a slash struck his left shoulder, causing blood to spill. Both Ix and Softie were caught off guard. The man with the eye patch admitted that his aim had been slightly off. If his attack had been just a little closer, he would have hit Ix in the head. He was also impressed that Ix could summon his counterpart from another world, Anima Incarna. For someone as young as Ix, he considered the ability quite impressive. Anima Incarna was a soul armament manifestation, a version of Ix from another world where gods like Millist existed. By summoning it, Ix could greatly increase his magical power. However, the ability consumed magic very quickly, so he could only use it once or twice a day. In the main game, Anima Incarna was a temporary power-up that became available around the middle of the story. The man with the eye patch claimed that no one could call themselves an advanced tier fighter without being able to pull off a move like that. He explained that this was why most people remain stuck at the intermediate tier forever. However, he wanted to make one thing clear. His group was also made up of elite fighters. His two teammates then summoned their soul armaments. The eye-patched man proudly declared that they would show Ix what years of experience looked like. Ix angrily wondered why the eye-patched man was not using advanced tier abilities himself. He then summoned his own soul armament. The masked man's soul armament suddenly shattered the fireball. He mocked Iking's fire giant, claiming it was all show and nothing more than a large empty doll. Iking's attacked with his flame threads, but the woman in the group easily dodged every attack. She pointed out that Iking's threads were always a little too slow. She then tried to crush Iking's with a stomp. Iking's quickly dodged while carrying Softie in his arms. The ground where Ix had been standing was crushed under the man's foot. After hearing their comments, Ix realized something disturbing. These people did not just know about his reputation. They knew about his actual abilities. While Ix was distracted, the man with the eye patch suddenly appeared behind him. He used wind magic to send Ix flying. Ix could not react in time. He had always believed that knowing his enemy's abilities ahead of time was supposed to be his greatest advantage. Fortunately, he managed to land safely while still holding Softie. As far as Ix remembered, Softie had never existed in the main game. These enemies should have been nothing more than background characters in the game. But this world was no longer a game. It was a real place, and everyone here seemed to have a life of their own. That also meant his enemies had grown stronger. The robed man suddenly appeared behind Ix and launched another attack. Ix turned around and tried to fight back. His sword was quickly blocked and pushed aside by the robed man's weapon. The man claimed that he had finally caught Ix and swung his sword again. But at that moment, Ix calmly pointed out that someone had arrived at incredible speed. The robed man was caught off guard when his attack was suddenly blocked. Salacia stood her ground and blocked the robed man's sword. With a serious look, she asked what she could do to help Ix. Ix told her to hold back the strongest opponent. Salacia understood. She said it was only a gut feeling, but the robed man looked like the strongest one among them. Ix then left him in Salacia's hands. While the robed man drank something, he introduced himself as Cassius, a former executioner of the Millis Church's Inquisition. He claimed to have been one of the finest swordsmen the church had ever had. Kalacia did not let him finish. She twisted her body in midair and kicked him, telling him to stop talking and fight. Cassius blocked the kick with his other arm, but Salacia quickly thrust her sword at him. He dodged the attack only to get hit by another powerful kick that sent him flying. Cassius landed on top of a nearby roof. He commented on Salicia's wild fighting style and guessed that she was the Black Knight in the making that he had heard so much about. To him, fighting Celestia felt like fighting a monster. Celestia said nothing. She simply stood ready with her sword. Cassius was amazed by her strength. As a former executioner, Cassius had a simple job in the church. He only had to cut off the heads of heretics. It did not matter whether they were moving or standing still. After doing the same job for so long, however, Cassius began to grow bored. He started wondering what it would feel like to cut down something far greater. Eventually, he wondered what it would be like to cut down a god. Cassius then asked Celestia why she was fighting. She gave him no answer, and instead rushed at him with her sword. Cassius defended himself against her attacks. He noticed that Celestia attacked without even the slightest hesitation. He admired that confidence and even felt jealous of it. He waited for the right moment before parrying her sword. Celestia lost her grip and accidentally let go of her weapon. She quickly avoided his thrust by throwing herself backward. Cassius still could not understand her. Celestia grabbed her sword by the blade and used it to block his next attack. Cassius then wondered why someone with such great power would risk everything for someone like Ix. Celestia noticed that Cassius had sliced through her shoulder guard as easily as cutting butter. She finally grew annoyed by his constant talking. She told him to stop talking, take the blade, and die like the worthless fool he was. Cassius then realized that children these days were truly terrifying. Celestia also wondered why she fought. The answer had never changed. She was Ix's sword, and she was also the one who had once killed him. In the past, a young and overweight Ix had been cornered by a girl known as the Black Wind, who scavenged battlefields for a living. After she beat him up, Ix asked what she wanted. He offered to make her a knight and become the sword at his side. That day, Celestia had been wandering alone through the ruins of her homeland's battlefield. Ix's offer gave her a purpose in life. The world-famous Vandil Knight Order took her in, and it became the luckiest thing that had ever happened to her. Ix's father, Knight Commander Axe Vandil, had once wished that Celestia's talent belonged to Ix instead. Ix was shocked when he heard this. Later, Celestia was assigned to serve as Ix's personal bodyguard and maid. By then, Ix had already given up on the sword. He chased after achievements as if he were running away from something. He proposed to nobles far above his station, blamed Celestia whenever things went wrong, and even caused trouble with a holy maiden. As time passed, Ix became more and more tyrannical. But for Celestia, living as his sword was perfect. She never had to think about anything. She simply followed orders, and even handled duties that were supposed to belong to the Knight Commander's heir. One day, Ix and his group were ambushed by a huge and dangerous monster. Celestia was captured, while Ix fled in fear and left her behind. Even so, Celestia defeated the monster on her own, and dragged its head back to the manor. Whenever she was ordered to defeat something, she did it, even if it meant risking her life. But when she returned, the manor gates did not open for a maid like her. Still, Celestia did not mind. She simply waited outside without thinking about anything, until sunrise. Those days eventually came to an end. A monster unlike anything she had ever seen appeared and carried Ix away, dragging him into a swamp filled with darkness. Celestia could have saved him if she had used everything she had. But she did not. She watched as Ix died before her eyes. With his death, Celestia could finally be free again, just as she had been before. However, she did not even know what freedom was. She simply stood there all day until the search party finally found her. A few days later, Ix somehow returned alive and collapsed in front of the manor gates. Celestia expected to be punished. However, when Ix woke up, he seemed confused. He did not know where he was or who Celestia was. That was when Celestia noticed that something about Ix had changed. He picked up his sword again, and together they faced enemies that Celestia could never defeat on her own. This time, Ix saved her and held her in his arms. He confronted the scarred man who had laid a hand on his maid and made it clear that he would pay for what he had done. Celestia was shocked by how much Ix had changed. He kept becoming stronger, far stronger than she had ever imagined. Before she knew it, more and more people had gathered around them. Celestia had once been nothing more than a black maggot who survived by scavenging battlefields. Now everything around her felt like a dream. But Celestia had a reason to fight. She was a sword. The memory of Ix saving her came back to her. She believed that a sword like her had no place beside its master if it was weak. If she was ordered to cut down people, she would do it. If she was ordered to cut down gods, she would do that too. With that resolve, Celestia took her stance and prepared to fight again. As Celestia attacked, Cassius noticed how careless her movements were. He could tell that she was not thinking about what she would do next. Celestia tried to avoid his attack by jumping away. Cassius considered her swordsmanship a complete failure. But Celestia did not care about proper technique. She only cared about cutting down anyone who stood against Ix. She swung her sword with all her strength and cut down Cassius. She prayed and hoped that Ix would never let her go. Cassius was already bleeding badly. Even so, he believed that Celestia had great potential. If she learned proper swordsmanship, he thought she could become the strongest swordsman in the world. No blade would ever be able to reach her skin. With that thought, Cassius finally collapsed, imagining the powerful swordswoman Celestia could one day become. Celestia told him to shut up and called him a scrub. Just listening to him made her skin crawl. Her slash had been so powerful that it even cut through the arch behind Cassius. She clicked her tongue in annoyance when she noticed that her armor had been damaged. Amelia had heard Salacia talking like a delinquent, which made her tremble in fear. Salacia noticed her and claimed that she had only happened to see her there. Amelia quickly swore that she had not heard anything Salacia said. She then began healing Salacia. The others soon joined them and were amazed to see healing magic in action. Meanwhile, Arl quietly whispered Cassius's name after finding her comrade lying in a pool of his own blood. Amelia realized that these were the people who had attacked Softie. She immediately went to Cassius and began healing him. Salacia pointed out that she had worked hard to give Cassius that wound, only for Amelia to heal it. Amelia apologized and stopped healing him, saying that she had only done it out of habit. Lele's and the boys then tied Cassius up first. Amelia thanked them for their help, while Arl remained silent. Claire then told everyone to look at Ick. He and the enemies were fighting in the air. She wondered if she would ever be able to do something like that herself. The eye-patched man warned Ix not to underestimate them, as they were war veterans. He sent Ix flying down to the ground. His attack was powered up after he summoned his anima incarna, a monster that looked like a wind djinn. The woman in his group angrily told him that a trump card like that should have been kept in reserve. The eye-patched man looked guilty, but he still told them to continue searching. The masked man looked down at the crater below and asked where the Holy Maiden was. The eye-patched man told them to capture the Holy Maiden and escape, while the Night Order still believed that the attack had been caused by a monster. While lying on the rubble, Ix realized that his tricks had already been exposed. Even so, he refused to run away because he was not like the others. Softie then knelt beside him and began healing his injuries. She told him to relax as she treated him. Ix thanked her, but he soon noticed something strange. He felt that Sophie's healing was somehow better than Amelia's. Her magic felt warm, almost as if it was heating him from the inside. Softie explained that a holy maiden normally used the patient's own magic to heal them by making it stronger. Amelia, however, used only her own magic whenever she healed someone. Ix realized that Amelia had been a careless healer. This also gave him an idea. If Amelia could focus on healing his magic instead, it might work better. He asked Softie to do exactly that. Softie explained that this would actually be much easier for her. Ix then told her that she would be dancing with him. Softie was left confused by what he meant. Just then the eye-patched man finally found them. He declared that it was time for the two of them to finally fall. However, Ix suddenly manifested his anima incarna. The giant flame creature roared as it pushed back the eye-patched man and his own anima incarna. The man could not believe that Ix had been able to use anima incarna several times in one day. He wondered what kind of person Ix really was. With Softie clinging to his back, Ix proudly declared that he had an endless supply of magic on his side. Together, he believed that the two of them were unbeatable. The eye-patched man heard this and complained that they were being unfair. Ix responded just as childishly, claiming that their teamwork was still better than fools like them. While clinging to Ix for her life, Softie suddenly realized something. She became worried about her older sister, Amelia. It seemed that her reckless sister was about to be tricked by a terrible man. Meanwhile, at the Cornelia Grand Cathedral, Irmeria received a report from another holy maiden. She asked if Softie had been found, but the maiden said that was not the case. Instead, a red giant was heading straight toward the cathedral. The maiden explained that the Holy Council had ordered them to stay on standby. As the first holy maiden of the Millis Church, Irmeria said she understood and decided to handle the situation herself. The maiden warned her that they had been ordered to stay back, but Irmeria ignored the order. She went outside with a sword in each hand and prepared to face the giant of flames. She wondered what the Night Order had been doing to let something like this roam freely. The maiden assumed that the knights simply did not want to get involved. Suddenly, the flame giant crashed down right in front of them. Ix stepped onto the ground and remarked that he had finally made it. He then dragged Softie toward Irmeria while walking away from his anima incarna and the other members of Deuslis who were lying on the ground. The eye-patched man was still conscious. He wondered why Ix had not finished them off. Ix explained that the last time he did that it had not felt very good. Besides, he believed that trash like them did not deserve a finishing blow. The eye-patched man called Ix a brat before losing consciousness like the rest of his team. Irmeria then called out to Softie. Ix asked Softie to take care of the rest. Confused, Softie wondered why she had to do it. Ix explained that he had finally reached his limit. As he walked forward, he suddenly lost consciousness and fell face first into Irmeria's chest. The first holy maiden immediately blushed in embarrassment as Ix rested his face against her chest. Softie became worried about him. Irmeria, however, decided to deliver a finishing blow to Ix. Softie quickly begged her not to.